Chapter 286. 30 miles outside Black Rock City. Dense sounds of horse hooves sounded, and a group of about 100 human cavalrymen galloped out of the sparse forest. Bai Xiaowen and Li Shiyi were in the lead. Beside Bai Xiaowen, there was a slender troll hunter riding a raptor. He was the target that Bai Xiaowen had controlled with the bewitching spell, so there was no problem with his loyalty. Among the cavalrymen following behind, except for the elite members of the Whitestone Army such as Bonita and Kitz, most of them were wearing white armor with Cecilia's family coat of arms. This cavalryman was composed of elites carefully selected from the Whitestone Army and Cecilia's army. It was worth mentioning that Cecilia did not accompany them. She led the remaining infantrymen and archers of the Whitestone Army and Cecilia's army and stayed on the city wall to defend. As a leader who was good at long-range shooting, Cecilia's snipe ability allowed her to kill the rare elite targets that posed the greatest threat in the remnant army. She also had the inspire skill, which could significantly increase the damage of the archers under her command. Considering that Cecilia's role in defending the city was greater, Bai Xiaowen tried his best to persuade her. Perhaps if she was not around, the growth of the loyalty would stagnate. However, before Bai Xiaowen figured out the meaning of loyalty, it was impossible for this unknown benefit to affect the completion of his main task. Just last night, after reporting the information to Prince Nicholas, Bai Xiaowen volunteered to activate another elite-level side task and shared it with Li Shiyi. Surprise attack behind the enemy, task objective, destroy at least 4 rear supply strongholds of the remnant army and destroy all war materials in the strongholds. Task time limit, 24 hours, task difficulty, I. Task reward, unknown. It should be noted that this kind of task would not have appeared if Bai Xiaowen had not taken the initiative to dig it out. It was he who provided the corresponding information to Nicholas and made the suggestion that the conditions for triggering the task were met. The A-level difficulty of this task should not be underestimated because it had the prefix of elite. Compared to Bai Xiaowen's S-rank mission of surprise attack on Lin in the Three Kingdoms plain, the difficulty of this mission was not inferior. Last night, after returning to the Blackrock Fortress and avoiding the sight of Cecilia and other plot characters, Bai Xiaowen opened the golden chest of the green-haired Mohican troll Tertius. After killing the level 6 boss Tertius, Bai Xiaowen and Shifeng only received a rank B evaluation. They had 2 chances to draw the lottery. This was because both of them had reached level 4 and were now intermediate awakened. These 2 draws were quite lucky. They drew a gold equipment, which was the blood spear used by Tertius. Its attack power was quite high, but it was a pity that the 2 of them couldn't use it, so they handed it over to Li Shiyi for the time being. The other special item was a nameplate with crooked words engraved on it. After identification, Bai Xiaowen confirmed the origin of the green-haired Mohican troll. He came from the Blood Spear tribe and was the son of the Blood Spear warlord Kairhan. For this reason, Li Shiyi teased Bai Xiaowen, saying that he had killed his younger brother. After all, before entering the Cane Plain, one of the 2 identities that he had drawn was the Blood Spear warlord's son. Bai Xiaowen didn't care about this small coincidence. After the battle in Blackrock City began, he led the cavalry straight to the first supply point of the allied forces of the remnants. Based on accurate information, Bai Xiaowen's army quickly found the target, and animal skin tents came into view. Kill everyone. Burn all the food and animal skins. If you have enough time, destroy all the equipment you can find. Bai Xiaowen ordered loudly. Under the leadership of Kitz and the other 3 knights, the cavalry quickly surrounded the stronghold and charged into the interior of the camp. Screams and cries, accompanied by curses in the language of the remnants, rang out. Weapons clashed and blood splattered. The originally peaceful stronghold of the remnants suddenly became a hell on earth. 5 burly orcs rushed out and waved their axes to launch a countercharge. However, Bai Xiaowen's deterrence skill froze them all in place, and then his cavalry and summoned creatures swarmed and hacked the 5 orcs to death. After the resistance of the stronghold was disintegrated, groups of the old, weak, women, and children of the remnants were driven to the open space. There were about 200 or 300 people. Just like the information before the war, among the logistics troops of these supply strongholds, there were children who were not satisfied with the height of the wheels. Although there was panic in their eyes, there was more bone-piercing hatred and tyrannical killing intent. Their mouths were still mumbling something. "What are they saying?" Li Shi asked. Bai Xiaowen knew the language of the survivors and could understand them. He couldn't help but shake his head. It's not without reason that humans call the remnants of the northern sinful realm beasts. Even a child this big is clamoring about killing all of you and eating all of you. Your Excellency, all the enemies in the stronghold have been eliminated. What should we do with these captives? A knight in white armor rode his horse to Bai Xiaowen. Bai Xiaowen remembered this person. He was one of the 3 main knights under Cecilia, Tim. My order is to kill them all. If your hearing is fine, carry out the order immediately. Bai Xiaowen said. But they are all old, weak, women, and children. Behind Tim, the other 2 knights in white armor, Mark and Phil, also rushed over and questioned. Yes, when we were knighted, we swore to be friendly to the weak, to face the strong bravely, and to be righteous and compassionate. The 3 knights said one after another. Gentlemen, I'm not discussing the dogma of the knights with you. Bai Xiaowen said coldly, there's no justice in war. Mercy and compassion are the privileges of the strong. Remember our current situation, we're attacking the rear of the allied forces of the remnants with only 100 cavalrymen. Not only are we the weak side, but even the human allied forces in Black Rock City are also the weak side. Do you still want to show your excessive compassion at this time? If Black Rock Fortress falls, all the humans will be killed by the remnants and even eaten as food. But this has nothing to do with killing the old, weak, women, and children. They don't have much combat power, Barita said. The old, weak, women, and children you mentioned will all eat humans, Bai Xiaowen said coldly. Do you know what they did when they went south and passed by human villages? Bai Xiaowen got from the memory fragments of the troll warrior that he controlled, which included the scenes of the allied forces razing human villages and eating humans as food. If our small troop wants to survive and complete the task in the rear of the allied forces of the remnants, the most important rule is to keep our whereabouts secret. Bai Xiaowen looked at the silent knights and said. You don't want your hands to be stained with blood, and I don't want to either. But gentlemen, I have to make one thing clear. This is war, and it's a war between races. It's a war of life and death, and only one side can survive. If getting my hands dirty can increase the odds of humans winning even a little bit, I'll do it without hesitation. Bai Xiaowen raised his gun and fired a bullet. An old half-orc was shot between his eyebrows and fell to the ground on his back. After a series of crazy roars, the more than 200 old, weak, women, and children lunged at the knights crazily with bloodshot eyes. Even the youngest child picked up a short spear that was taller than him and charged at the knights desperately. Kill! Bai Xiaowen's loud order made the confused human cavalrymen get the order. They raised their weapons one by one and instinctively urged their horses to kill. Soon, the camp was covered with blood. The atmosphere in the field was a little silent. Although they had one, the knights were silent like stone statues. The creed that they had held for many years was trampled on, and the pain in their hearts at this time could be imagined. However, Bai Xiaowen further ordered that every fallen remnant should be stabbed, and no one should be allowed to live. Let Kits and the others do it. Li Shi glanced at the knights with pity. She and Bai Xiaowen regarded the spiritual realm as a copy in a game, so they had less psychological pressure. Of course, they still had psychological pressure. As for Kits and the others, they were originally bandits, so they shouldn't care about this kind of thing. Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, all troops, carry out the order. The silent knights put down their lances, dismounted, drew their swords, and methodically looked through the corpses in the field. When they saw that there were still people alive, they stabbed them and killed them completely. Bai Xiaowen took a deep breath and ordered Kits and the others to pour the prepared oil on the piles of corpses, tents, and food, and set them on fire. The fire rose to the sky with black smoke. There was a reason why Bai Xiaowen didn't give the job of stabbing the corpses to Kits, but ordered Tim, Mark, Phil, and other genuine knights to do it together. In the dangerous rear of the Allied forces of the remnants, the slightest carelessness would cause the whole army to be wiped out. There was no time to think about these knights slowly. They must overcome their moral guilt in the first battle. The sound of hooves was heard, and the human cavalrymen left, leaving only the burned ruins full of corpses. On the main battlefield, the main forces of the Allied forces of the remnants, the Orc wolf riders and the Harpy archers, had joined the battlefield. The Harpy archers caused considerable trouble for the Allied forces of the humans. Although these birdmen flying in the sky could only fly at a low altitude, they were still much higher than the height of the city wall. The advantage of shooting from a high altitude was needless to say, but if the human archers wanted to fight back, they had to shoot from an upward angle, which had little effect. Fortunately, the strength of the Harpy archers was low, and the short bows they used were much weaker than standard bows. Moreover, Cecilia had used snipe to kill several elite Harpies in succession. This caused these birdmen, who were originally unscrupulous, to have some misgivings in their hearts. They did not dare to get too close. Surrounded by a group of soldiers, the thunder behemoth slowly climbed to a distance of 100 meters from the city wall, and the horn at the tip of its nose began to condense electric light. Bolts of lightning as thick as buckets exploded on the city wall and arrow towers like powerful bombs. Wherever the lightning struck, the soldiers of the Allied forces of the humans were turned into charcoal, and even the city walls and arrow towers made of black rock were loosened and collapsed. The good news was that although the lightning attack of the thunder behemoth was terrible, the frequency of the attack was relatively slow. After each lightning strike, it needed a short time to recover before it could continue with the next attack. The Allied forces of the humans were not idle either. The large catapults arranged on the city wall began to operate, and the rumbling sound was heard continuously. Stones as big as washbasins, wrapped in powerful kinetic energy, were smashed to the behemoths. There were casualties on both sides, and the Allied forces of the remnants, as the besiegers, suffered heavy casualties. The chief of the Orcs, Absalon, the commander of the Allied forces, was not moved at all. Most of the dead were Orcs, who were just cannon fodder. After paying a heavy price, the Allied forces of the remnants had achieved a great result. In the afternoon, the 24 arrow towers outside Black Rock City had all been uprooted. Countless corpses of Orcs filled the trenches and piled up into hills under the city wall. "Charge! Charge!" Absalon roared and urged the giant wolf under him to lead the charge himself. The Allied forces of the remnants rushed to the many damaged city walls as if they had been injected with chicken blood. Maple City, Underground Research Institute. "Oh, it looks like we won't be able to hold on." A short, green-skinned zombie with a large head was walking in the backyard of the Lord's mansion. He watched a huge projection screen inside. "It's already like this on the first day. The boss has to hold on for 10 days. Well, there are still 6 days left. That's quite difficult. No wonder he came up with such a crazy idea." On the projection screen, the scene of the defensive battle of Black Rock Fortress was displayed. It was Dr. Zombie who came out. Harvey, the newly promoted butler of Bai Xiaowen, was responsible for protecting Dr. Zombie. Both of them were weak in combat. "Mr. Erudite, it's time to let out some fresh air." "You should get to work," Harvey said. "What, I just came out for less than a minute." Dr. Zombie was angry. "The Lord said that you don't need to rest," Harvey said respectfully, but his attitude was firm. "What do you know?" "The work of a scientist. Erudite needs inspiration." "Inspiration, do you understand?" Dr. Zombie shouted. "But Sir Monarch said that the research work has been completed. What you have been doing now is to supervise and guide the production. This doesn't need inspiration." Harvey was not so easily fooled. "That guy. I've already completed all 3 orders this month. How dare he order me around like this? What's with the advance of next month's orders? Shameless. Shameless. Hypocrite." Dr. Zombie complained angrily. Chapter 287. North of the Black Rock Fortress, behind the Allied army. The raging flames devoured everything. Supplies, corpses, tents, everything was burned to the ground. The flames danced, but the knights were expressionless like stone statues. They had violated the Knights' Creed more times today than they had in their entire lives. At the rear of the army, the rearguard has begun to rescue and protect the supply stronghold, Bai Xiaowen said. Next, the difficulty of destroying the stronghold will gradually increase. Moreover, our situation will become more and more dangerous. When the main force of the Allied army returns, the real fierce battle will begin. Get on the horses. The next supply stronghold, let's go. Black Rock Fortress, the main battlefield. Grand Chief Absalon of the Allied army rode on a giant wolf and waved a huge battle axe as he rushed to the city wall. Boom! The heavy city gate shook violently as the axe fell. Even the specially reinforced city gate can't stop this guy. The higher-ups of the Human Alliance army on the city wall were shocked. The city gate was strong enough to withstand the impact of a battering ram, but when Absoran's axe came down, it showed signs of collapsing. However, before Absalon could swing his axe a second time, dense stones and boiling oil poured down from the city wall. The powerful chief of the beast camp had no choice but to retreat a dozen steps to avoid the attack. At this moment, the city gate opened, and a group of knights rushed out of the city like a storm. The one in the lead was Prince Nicholas. A shadow of a giant hammer came crashing down. Prince Nicholas had activated Heaven's Hammer. The wolf riders around Absoran were smashed into piles of flesh and bones. Only Absoran was able to withstand the damage and was not killed in an instant. Are you the prince of the human empire? Absalon sneered. You have some skills, but you're still far from being my match. No matter how many elite or leader-level knights were behind Prince Nicholas, Absalon was fearless. He rushed forward with his giant axe and slashed down. While cutting a knight in half, he also left a terrible wound on the second knight. On the city wall, a ray of light shone down, and the wound on the second knight quickly healed. The sound of prayers rang out, and a golden light shrouded Prince Nicholas. His strength increased greatly, and he smashed down with his war hammer. There was a loud bang, and both Nicholas and Absalon were shaken. Both of them received a certain amount of recoil damage. Damn it, if you don't have any spells on you, you won't be able to fight against me. Absoran roared in the language of the survivors. He waved his giant axe and fought against Nicholas. However, when Nicholas' HP was depleted, he would receive timely and effective healing, while when Absoran's HP fell, he would not receive effective healing. The knights led by Nicholas surrounded Absalom, thrusting their lances and slashing their swords. Roar! Absoran roared angrily, and a visible blood-colored ripple spread out. More than half of the knights were in a state of dizziness for a long time. Nicholas, Count Denton, and the others who were stronger were also stiff. Absoran leaped from the wolf's back and swung his axe down. Nicholas' armor flashed with a blue radiance, and 3 layers of blue flashing shields opened up. He lifted the hammer with great effort and placed it in front of him. Clang! There was a loud bang, and the 4 hooves of Nicholas' beloved horse suddenly sank into the frozen ground below, and all of them were broken. This attack had actually shaken Nicholas' horse to death, and it had caused quite a lot of shock damage, but it was all offset by the blue shield. Nicholas was also enraged, and he swung his hammer horizontally, hitting Absoran's giant axe and knocking him back. Just as the battle at the city gate was fierce, suddenly, a desolate horn sounded from the camp of the survivors' coalition army. The signal to retreat? Absoran was stunned, and he was both shocked and angry. Who sent the signal to retreat without my order? I am the commander. A bald troll riding a tall velociraptor leapt over and said loudly, Chief, more than 10 clan leaders have jointly requested a retreat. That's why we blew the retreat signal. You should go back quickly. After the signal to retreat sounded, the survivors' coalition army, which was originally under the walls of the Black Rock Fortress, retreated quickly like the tide of the sea. No matter how brave Absoran was, he did not dare to stay alone. He snorted, patted his mount Wolf, and joined the retreat of the army. Prince Nicholas led the army to attack, but he did not dare to pursue too deep, and he did not dare to leave the range of the defenders. It seems that Dior's battle was successful. Count Denton rode over and whispered, "Your Highness, this first siege, we have defended the city." "That's right, now we just hope that he can get out safely and return to the fortress," Nicholas said. "Why are we retreating?" Absorin asked angrily on the way back. A troll with red hair tied into a thin braid spread out his hands and said, "Chief, we have a problem in the rear. 3 supply points have been attacked by humans, and thousands of logistics personnel have died. It's just 3 supply points, what's the big deal?" Absorin was furious. "If you all followed my charge, we would have killed the human prince and entered Blackrock City. Kyrhan, you and your Bloodspear clan are cowards. Absorin, we are different from you." Another short and stout orc, who looked like an anvil, said in a low voice. "The families of the clan leaders like us are all at the rear of the strongholds, but your family is with us. One more thing, if we can't take down Blackrock City and the strongholds are all burned down, what will the warriors eat? Will they fight on empty stomachs?" Another clan leader said. "That's right, Absorin. Although you are brave, the humans are not all useless. That prince was able to resist your attack. Blackrock City is not that easy to take down. Even if we rush in, there are other powerful humans who will stop us. It is said that Kale Man's army was defeated by an archbishop who could cast a forbidden divine spell. Think about it, if such a terrible forbidden spell were to fall on us in battle. Even with our strength, I think it would be a disaster. That's right, let's take our time to attack Blackrock City after cleaning up the rear." Chapter 288. Kill. The human cavalrymen led by Xiaowen collided head-on with a phalanx of Dark Elves patrol team. Deterrence. Invisible coercion spread out, and the patrol team composed of ordinary Dark Elves instantly fell into a state of coma or fear. The 3 knights, Tim, Mark, and Phil, held their lances and, like a sharp arrow, cut through the Dark Elves patrol team, assassinated the Dark Elves who were unable to move, and forcibly cut open a bloody path before leaving. Although the Dark Elves regained their mobility midway, when the infantry faced the cavalrymen and their formation was disrupted, they could only be lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Fortunately, Bai Xiaowen's army was in a hurry to escape and did not continue fighting. Otherwise, more than 100 Dark Elves would have been annihilated. They watched the cavalrymen led by Bai Xiaowen leave, but they could not catch up. Bai Xiaowen glanced at the cavalrymen around him. After nearly a day and a night of raiding, there were only more than 60 cavalrymen left, and the rest were covered in blood and their armor was damaged. The battle-loss ratio was close to 40%. If it were an ordinary army, the morale would have collapsed. Although the proportion of losses was not small, the results were quite fruitful. The total number of strongholds behind the Allied forces that you have burned is 8/4. Elite level side task, surprise attack on the enemy's rear has been completed. Completion rate, excellent. Please see Prince Nicholas or Archbishop Arlo to submit the task and receive the reward. The task required at least 4 strongholds to be destroyed, and Bai Xiaowen destroyed 8, so it was natural for him to get an excellent completion rate. "I thought it would be a perfect completion rate," Li Shi whispered as he rode beside him, covered in dust. "A perfect completion rate, I'm afraid we have to destroy at least 10 strongholds." "It's good enough to get an excellent score," Bai Xiaowen said. "I think the difficulty of this A-level elite task doesn't seem to be very high," Li Shi said. "When we attacked the various strongholds, there was no decent resistance. In comparison, only the rearguard patrol team of the Allied Army of the Remnants is a little troublesome, but with the combination of your deterrence skill and the cavalry assault, they are not too difficult to deal with." Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, "This A-rank elite mission has not been submitted yet. The real difficulty is the way back. Its difficulty is a kind of flexible mechanism." "Elastic mechanism?" Li Shi repeated. "That's right. Everything depends on how much damage we cause to the Allied army and how much time it takes," Bai Xiaowen explained. "If we destroy the 4 strongholds and complete the basic degree of completion before retreating, the Allied forces of the Remnants will suffer such a degree of damage." It is estimated that it will be just enough for them to withdraw and defend, but they will not hate us too much. Moreover, because we returned early, we will only encounter some rearguard troops when we retreat, and we won't encounter the main force. Now that we have expanded our achievements and destroyed a total of 8 strongholds, there are beacons everywhere in the rear of the Allied forces. They must hate us to the core. Moreover, because we have destroyed twice as many strongholds, we will return later, and it is very likely that we will encounter the main force of the remnants. Therefore, the real difficult moment has not yet come, and we need to be mentally prepared. Li Shi said in surprise, the main force of the remnants? How can we fight with only a few dozen people left? Of course, we can't fight head-on, but our whereabouts are relatively hidden, which is a great advantage. The main force of the remnants can only search for us in small groups. Therefore, we will certainly not encounter a large force, but a small elite force of dozens or hundreds of people, which is more likely. Li Shi said with a smile, I understand. The main force of the remnant is like a big net, and we are the fish. Perhaps, if we are lucky enough, we can go through the net and return to the Black Rock Fortress without fighting. You'd better not have such a fluke mentality. Generally, there will not be such a mistake in an A-rank elite mission. It is not realistic to expect a mistake in the calculation of the rules of the spiritual world, Bai Xiaowen said. After an hour of galloping, Bai Xiaowen and the others could already see Black Rock City on the distant horizon. We're almost there, Li Shi said happily. Waha, when I go back, I will be a hero of mankind. Kits laughed, and many cavalrymen of the Whitestone army raised their weapons and cheered loudly. Tim and other righteous knights, who seemed to have not come out of the guilt of slaughtering the weak civilians, were still silent. However, there was a trace of relief and relaxation in their stone-like faces. Get ready to fight. Bai Xiaowen suddenly reined in his horse and raised his right hand. Everyone stopped in their tracks. The surroundings were quiet, and there was a smell of death in the air. A slightly shaky voice came from behind the hillside not far away. You are very interesting, human. Your perception of danger is as keen as that of a beast. Now I understand why you can come here under the siege of the army. With this voice, a team of troll warriors appeared. There were about 50 troll warriors in this team, and they were all muscular and had a strong aura. They were elites that were hard to come by. The scariest was the troll leader. His red hair was braided, and his 2 fangs were twisted. His skin was suffused with a strange dark blue color. A strange and powerful aura surged from his body. Bai Xiaowen first used Insight. Kairhan, leader level 7, /undead 78%, race, humanoid/troll, profession, death hunter, attributes, strength 42, agility 70, constitution 31, spirit 17, skill 1, shadow strike, passive skill. Kairhan's normal attacks will release an additional shadow energy, causing additional shadow magic damage to the target. Skill 2, death siphon. Kairhan absorbs the souls of the undead of plague and heals himself. Each undead of plague that dies in the surrounding area will recover 20% of Kairhan's maximum HP. Skill 3, Blood Spear Battle Flag, LV2 passive skill. Kairhan's HP is increased by 400 points, and gains 40% immunity to control effects and abnormal statuses. Skill 4? Skill 5? Bai Xiaowen took a deep breath. Blood Spear Warlord Kairhan. He didn't expect to meet him here. Kairhan's strength was probably stronger than the Vanguard, Giant Hammer Berserker Kale Man. What Bai Xiaowen was more concerned about was Kairhan's undead 78% status. What did that mean? Bai Xiaowen thought of a possibility. He quickly used Insight on the troll warriors next to him, but found that these troll warriors were already undead wearing troll skin. They were all undead/corpse fae. However, for some reason, these troll warriors still retained a considerable amount of intelligence. Just as Bai Xiaowen was deep in thought, a troll warrior next to Kairhan laughed loudly. Leader, this cowardly human is so scared that he doesn't dare to speak. The other troll warriors also laughed. Kairhan shook his head. All of you, shut up. This is a warrior who dares to attack our rear alone. You can kill him, but you can't laugh at him." The troll warriors shut their mouths. The troll's conversation was in the language of the survivors, and only Bai Xiaowen could understand it. However, the other human knights could also see that Kairhan had stopped the troll warriors from laughing. Bai Xiaowen's heart skipped a beat, and he urged his warhorse forward a few steps. "You're the Blood Spear warlord, Kairhan?" Kairhan was a little surprised, but then he nodded and said, "I didn't expect that the intelligence of the Human Alliance army has reached such a detailed level." He did not expect Bai Xiaowen to recognize him. Bai Xiaowen did not answer his question. Instead, he made a strange movement. He opened his arms and drew a large arc in the air. Then, he held his right elbow with his left hand, stretched his right arm forward, and gently hooked his index finger. He immediately said, "I, the human lord of Whitestone Town, Dior Kale Bloom, challenge you. Kairhan, do you dare to duel me? A one-on-one duel?" Kairhan smiled playfully. "You are very familiar with the traditions of our survivors. Even the provocation of a duel is not bad. If it weren't for your human appearance, I would have suspected that you were an orc or a troll. Don't say so much. I bet on the honor of our ancestors. Do you dare to accept the challenge?" Bai Xiaowen shouted in a deep voice, and at the same time, he shouted in the language of the survivors. Kairhan did not expect Bai Xiaowen to use the language of the survivors and was stunned. Seeing Bai Xiaowen so arrogant, the troll warriors could not bear it. A sturdy troll guard took a step forward and said loudly, "You are not qualified to challenge the leader. I can tear off your head." Bai Xiaowen shouted in the language of the survivors, "Then you go first. After I kill you, I will kill your leader. Stand down." Kairhan yelled. The troll warrior did not dare to disobey and could only retreat resentfully. "Human, your strength is not even half of mine. If you challenge me, your chances of winning are infinitely close to zero." Kairhan stared at Bai Xiaowen and said slowly, "Why do you want to do this?" Kairhan did not give Bai Xiaowen time to answer and continued, "However, I will not agree. My grandfather once taught me that no matter how absurd the enemy's request seems, no matter how beneficial it is to me, I cannot agree. Greed for small gains will lead to falling into the enemy's trap." After a pause, Kairhan continued, "Now, the 50 warriors under my command are far stronger than your tired soldiers. In a normal battle, my chances of winning are higher. In that case, why should I lower my chances of winning and agree to your challenge?" Bai Xiaowen shook his head. "I thought that the survivors valued honor. It seems that I was wrong. An ugly victory is far better than 1,000 glorious defeats," Kairhan said slowly. "Then let's fight." Bai Xiaowen waved his hand. "All troops, charge. Black Rock City is in front of us. Kill these trolls and return as heroes." The knights around Bai Xiaowen answered loudly. Their desire to survive and their sense of honor were burning, and their morale was reinvigorated. "Why are you in such a hurry? Before you die, I want to talk to you more. It's rare to see such an interesting human like you," Kairhan said. "If there weren't any vengeful survivors chasing after me, I would be happy to talk to you more." Bai Xiaowen exposed Kairhan's plan to stall for time, and at the same time, he secretly sighed in his heart at the caution of this old fox. Obviously, he had already occupied a considerable advantage on the battlefield, but he still wanted to stall for time and strive to let the other main forces of the survivors behind catch up and encircle him. As the cavalry charged, a flashing book with a funny face suddenly appeared in Bai Xiaowen's right hand and aimed at Kairhan. The additional skill of the Demon Book of Ravings, was activated. Ravings, select a target, whether enemy or friend, roll the dice, and cast a random spell on the target. The more points you roll, the higher the star level of the spell. 3 transparent 6-sided dice appeared, flipped a few times in the air, and landed on the ground, 4, 5, 6. The spiritual realm's rules prompt information, your roll of the dice is 15 points. The Raving skill is activated. A random spell will be drawn from the 4-star spells. Target, Blood Spear Warlord Kyrhan. Spell draw result, Sacred Prism. Sacred Prism, 4-star skill. Turn the target into a prism filled with sacred energy, immediately restoring 30% of the target's maximum HP, limit, 400 points. Shoot sacred energy to all targets in the surrounding area, restoring 10% of their maximum HP. After seeing the skill description of Sacred Prism, Bai Xiaowen's face darkened. There were so many damage and control skills, how did he get a healing skill? Fortunately, the battle had just begun, and Kyrhan and his soldiers were full of HP. If he used it in the heat of the battle, Kyrhan's HP would suddenly increase by 30%, which was 210 plus. How could he fight? The reason why Bai Xiaowen chose to try his luck at the start of the battle was also because he had considered this point. Even if he rolled a healing spell, it wouldn't be of any help. At most, he would be ridiculed as a lunatic. Of course, there was still a certain risk in doing so. What if he rolled a buff spell? However, the probability was still very small. These thoughts ran through Bai Xiaowen's mind for 0.1 seconds. Immediately after, Bai Xiaowen was surprised to hear a scream. The light of the sacred energy was projected on Kyrhan's body, and it actually illuminated a large area of white fog. A large area of Kyrhan's body festered, as if he had been doused in boiling oil. It was extremely frightening. Above his head, a high damage of 107 points suddenly appeared. Immediately after, the light of the sacred energy spread out, and the surrounding troll warriors all had damage values of a few dozen points appear above their heads. Charge! May the sacred light be with us. Lord Dior is so powerful. Our army will win. The morale of Tim, Mark, Phil, and the other knights suddenly increased. They waved the weapons in their hands and roared as they charged. This. You seem to have made a mistake. Chapter 289. In fact, the reason why a healing spell like Holy Prism could cause such high damage was probably because of Kyrhan's undead body. Divine energy and the undead, those were the enemies of each other. In the skill description of Holy Prism, it had already stated that it was holy energy, so it could not be wrong. For living beings, Holy Prism could recover HP, but for the undead, it was probably a damaging skill. For example, the diluted holy water sold by the quartermaster of the Black Rock Fortress could strengthen a normal person's body, but for the undead, if Kyrhan's undead body had reached 100%, then Holy Prism would deal 30% of his maximum HP in damage. Including Kyrhan's resistance, the damage would definitely be very high because holy damage had a bonus effect on undead and demon-type targets. However, Kyrhan's current undead level was 78%, and 22% was a living body. The part of him that was a living body would be directly healed by the Holy Prism. With this addition and subtraction, the final damage value was fixed at 107 points, but it was already quite high. Holy Prism was a 4-star skill, after all. What did it mean? Ordinary bosses would not have 4-star skills. Only rare bosses, such as Prince Nicholas and Kyokusanagi, would have 4-star skills. To be able to roll for a 4-star skill, Bai Xiaowen's luck exploded. When he received the Demonic Book of Ravings, he had already looked into the relationship between the number of points and the star level of a skill. A 4-star skill required at least 15 points to be cast, and a 5-star skill required 18 points to be cast. 3 6-sided dice, the highest roll was 18 points, which was the legendary 3 6s, leopards. Kyrhan was the leader of a clan, and he was much stronger than ordinary bosses. He endured the pain and roared. He raised his hand and a cold energy was projected onto Bai Xiaowen's body. Spiritual Realm Rule Notification, Blood Spear Warlord Kyrhan's skill, Mark of Death has taken effect. All damage you receive increases by 30% for 60 seconds. This was a skill that he had not detected before. It increased damage by 30% and had a duration of 1 minute. It was ridiculously strong. Immediately after, Kyrhan's thick and powerful legs kicked off the back of the velociraptor, and he leaped up, his blood-red spear piercing through the air towards Bai Xiaowen's chest. This spear could only be described with one word, and that was fast. Kai'erhan's dexterity was as high as 70 points. Compared to Bai Xiaowen, the difference was ridiculously large. Although Bai Xiaowen had predicted the angle of the spear, there was no way he could dodge it. Deterrence. At the crucial moment, this powerful mutated skill that didn't require any casting action played a role. Not only Kai'erhan, but even his troll warriors fell into the fear state. The trolls with lower spirit were even stunned. Kir Khan had the LV2, Blood Spear War Flag, passive skill, which allowed him to resist 40% of crowd control effects. Bai Xiaowen's deterrence should have been able to maintain the fear state for 4 to 5 seconds, but in reality, it only lasted a little more than 2 seconds. However, these 2 seconds were enough for the skeleton swordsman to rush forward and surround Kai'erhan. Bai Xiaowen pulled out the Desert Eagle, aimed at Kai'erhan's forehead, and fired angrily. The shot hit a vital point, and it was a critical hit with a 250% increase. Blood spurted out from Kai'erhan's forehead, and he lost close to 100 HP again. His dark blue skin was covered in blood, and he looked eerie and terrifying. "I'll crush you all." Kai'erhan roared, his spear stabbing out as fast as lightning, leaving behind afterimages. If the giant hammer berserker Kelman's 70 points of strength represented the pinnacle of strength, then this undead hunter Kelman's 70 points of agility represented the pinnacle of speed. This was the fastest person Bai Xiaowen had ever seen. Of course, during the defensive battle in Jinghai City, the 3 masters who were evolvers and above were not included. They were of different levels, and there was no comparison. The skeleton swordsman didn't even have time to block, and almost every spear attack dealt a lot of damage. Kai'erhan's 42 points of strength were not just for show. Coupled with the high critical hit brought by his high dexterity, he could kill a skeleton swordsman with just 2 spears. Bai Xiaowen had summoned 3 skeleton sword shield bearers, but 2 of them were killed instantly. Then, a lightning throw came from not far away, and finally interrupted Kai'erhan's movements. With a light dancing shadow, Li Shi activated the Savage Charge skill and slammed into Kai'erhan's body. Surrounded by Fatty, the skeleton swordsman, and the shadow assassin, Kai'erhan couldn't dodge the Savage Charge, no matter how high his dexterity was. He was knocked back and stunned for a short time. Li Shi slashed out with both swords, and then used Combo Slash and Judgment Dagger. She quickly stacked her passive skills, and in the midst of the rising flames, she had activated the Devil Fire Jade Pendant's Devil Fire Dance skill. The sound of footsteps echoed out as the giant demon warrior controlled by Bai Xiaowen rushed over. Its sharp spear flashed with a blood-red light as it stabbed towards Kai'erhan. Blood-bursting assassination. The troll warrior's HP, which was originally around 200, suddenly fell by half. However, Kai'erhan also received more than 50 damage from this attack. In theory, the damage dealt was the same amount of damage to the troll warrior's HP, but the damage reduction needed to be taken into account. Traitor! Kai'erhan snorted, and with a backhand thrust, the troll warrior was pierced through like a stick of candied haws, directly killing him. Then the spear shook, and blood splashed out. To be able to kill his own people without blinking, Kai'erhan was worthy of being the hero of the Allied forces. However, sacrificing the controlled troll warrior was part of Bai Xiaowen's plan. In this way, he could continue to use the important skill, Spell Switch. Although Bai Xiaowen controlled the summoned creatures to besiege Kai'erhan, he didn't participate in the attack himself. Except for the first attack that hit Kale Man with 250% critical damage, Bai Xiaowen's other bullets hit the troll warrior who was fighting with the human cavalry. To be precise, he was killing the troll warrior. When the troll warrior's HP was half reduced and about to die, Bai Xiaowen would shoot and kill him. Li Shi felt a little strange. Bai Xiaowen's actions were very abnormal. According to common sense, he should let the storyline soldiers fight with the opponent's small soldiers, and what the Awakened should do was to focus fire and kill the boss to get the treasure chest. Bai Xiaowen's long-range damage output was not low, but why waste it on those troll warriors? Although it was strange, Li Shi didn't ask. She had almost blind trust in Bai Xiaowen, or it could be said that she worshipped him. From the three kingdoms until now, Bai Xiaowen's judgment had almost never been wrong. Xiaowen must have his reasons for doing this. I just need to do my job well, and that's enough. With this thought in mind, Li Shi's two swords, which were burning with flames, kept stabbing, reducing Kairan's HP. Although Kairan's damage output was high, his 31 points of constitution was his weakness, and his armor and resistance were not outstanding. His 700 plus HP was mainly supported by the passive Blood Spear War flag, so it was relatively weak. Holy Prism, Headshot, Blood Burst Assassination. Many skills with high single damage were stacked, and Li Shi's continuous damage output was terrifying. Soon, Kairan's HP was sharply reduced to 300 points, less than half of his HP. Souls of the dead, come to me. Kairan roared loudly, and the blood spear suddenly stabbed into the ground. A strong suction force surged and enveloped the entire battlefield. Every dead troll warrior had an illusory thread on their body that was connected to Kairan like a pipe. Ha ha! Despair! Suffer! I am immortal, and my injuries will be completely healed soon. This is the power bestowed by the ruler. Kairan roared loudly in the common language. The spiritual realm's rules prompted information. Blood Spear Warlord Kairan's skill, Death Siphon activated. It will absorb the souls of the nearby plague undead to heal itself. Each plague undead soul will restore 20% of Kairan's maximum HP. Li Shi was instinctively shocked, but Bai Xiaowen's voice sounded at the same time. Don't worry about him. Slash a few more times while he's posing is the right way to go. After Kairan's pose for 2 seconds, there was no other change except that his HP dropped by a few dozen points. What's going on? Why didn't I absorb any souls? Kairan was both shocked and angry. Bai Xiaowen happily looked at the black soul stone's growth rate and soul essence continuously increasing. After thinking for a while, he decided not to tell the truth. He would let Kairan die in ignorance. After all, villains died because they talked too much. Li Shi also understood. Bai Xiaowen had attacked those troll warriors who were about to die just now in order to steal their contribution points. He had used the Black Soul Stone to absorb their souls. Li Shi already knew that the Black Soul Stone had the ability to absorb the souls of the dead, but Bai Xiaowen had to contribute a certain amount to it. Xiaowen is really too powerful. Originally, such a shameless boss with such a powerful recovery skill was directly crippled. Li Shi had this thought in her mind, but she didn't stop her attack. Kairan quickly realized that if he could not absorb souls to recover his HP, it meant that he would most likely die on the spot. Thinking of this, Kairan's eyes quickly turned red. He let out a scream from his throat and waved his spear in a spiral, forcing the summoned creatures and Li Shi away. Then, he shot his spear at Li Shi like a bolt of lightning. Kairan's judgment was very accurate. Li Shi was Bai Xiaowen's party with the highest damage output. This spear carried a terrifying shadow energy. It was Kairan's main battle skill, Shadow Strike. Although Li Shi's dexterity was high, it was still not enough to deal with Kairan. He only had time to shift half a body's position. However, Fatty, who was on the side, rushed over under Bai Xiaowen's prediction. He activated his charge and forcefully knocked Li Shi half a body's position away again. Splat! The blood-red spear pierced through Fatty's body, causing a total of 120 points of terrifying combined damage, physical damage plus magic damage. Fortunately, this attack's damage was shared between Bai Xiaowen and Fatty, so it did not hit any vital points. After Kairan stabbed Fatty's suture, he did not pull out the blood spear immediately. Instead, he grinned and activated another skill that was not detected, blood boiling. Clang clang clang. 3 consecutive sonic booms rang out from Fatty's body. Foul blood spurted out from Fatty's deathly white skin. A huge, transparent, bloody hole appeared where Fatty had been pierced by the blood spear. 81. 92. 196. the last attack was obviously a critical hit. This, boiling blood, skill exploded 3 times in a row, causing a total of 369 points of terrifying damage. Not only that, when Kairhan used boiling blood, the violent fluctuations of energy also pushed Li Shui and the others 2 to 3 meters away. Still not dead? Seeing that Fatty was still alive and holding his spear tightly with both hands, Kairhan was surprised. The zombie demon in front of him seemed to be a little too strong. If not for the existence of life-sharing, Fatty would definitely have been killed. However, there were pros and cons. While Fatty suffered a huge amount of damage, Bai Xiaowen also had to share the damage. When Shadow Strike caused 120 combined damage, Bai Xiaowen's nose was already bleeding. After boiling blood, damage exploded, Bai Xiaowen directly spat out a large mouthful of blood, and his HP dropped by 208 points. Fortunately, Death Mark's 60 seconds of damage increase had passed. Otherwise, Bai Xiaowen would have been doomed. Kairhan laughed loudly. So you thought this zombie demon was your natal summon beast? How foolish. Then I'll let you die together. Kairhan tried to pull out the spear. Although Fatty tried his best to hold it tightly, his 21 points of strength was still half of Kairhan's 42 points of strength. The spear was pulled out piece by piece. However, Bai Xiaowen took a step forward and reached out to grab the spear. Are you kidding me? You're a wizard. Do you think you're stronger than this zombie demon? Fool! Kairhan laughed heartily and reached out to pull. However, this pull caused Kairhan's expression to change abruptly. He felt that the spear seemed to be welded to the stitched monster's body, and it could not be moved at all. Impossible. Even if the two of you combined your strength, it's impossible to surpass mine. Kairhan said. Bai Xiaowen's strength was 20 points, and Fatty's was 21 points. Even if they added them together, they could not compare to Kairhan. Moreover, when multiple weaklings fought against the strong, the strength was not simply added up. For example, the skeleton sword shieldbearer's strength was 15 points. If 10 skeleton sword shieldbearers were to play tug-of-war with a boss whose strength was as high as 100 points, could they win? Obviously not. No matter how hard a group of ants tried, the most they could do was lift a worm. It was impossible for them to move an elephant. In fact, Bai Xiaowen's strength was now close to Kairhan's. Gold equipment, pain ring. Additional skill, pain potential, passive skill. For every 10 points of damage you receive, increase strength by 1 point. This effect only counts damage received within 30 seconds. Chapter 290. Kairhan made a prompt decision. He abandoned the long spear and pulled out 2 short spears from his back. His speed was astonishing. The original long weapon had become a dual-wielding single-handed weapon. Although the damage of a single hit was greatly reduced, and the probability of blocking attacks was also greatly reduced, Kairhan's attack speed had obviously increased, and his damage output was also higher. With a flash of light, Bai Xiaowen summoned the last skeleton swordsman in advance. It accurately blocked the path of one of the short spears, and at the same time, cut off the health sharing with Fatty. Fatty was once again stabbed by the short spear, and his HP dropped rapidly. However, the skeleton swordsman was lucky to encounter a 10% chance of dodging small piercing attacks. The short spear pierced between its bones and did not cause any damage. Of course, this small interlude only allowed it to live for less than a second. Kairhan's high 70 agility was no joke. He instantly pulled back and stabbed again, accurately hitting the skeleton swordsman's throat. The skill of Shadow Strike was triggered, causing 79 points of mixed damage. It was an instant kill. At this time, Li Shui and the others, who had just been knocked back, rushed up to surround Kairhan. Taking advantage of the fact that Kairhan's ability to block attacks was greatly reduced, they desperately fought for HP. 2 seconds later, the surviving skeleton swordsmen were all wiped out. The Shadow Assassin, under Bai Xiaowen's command, blocked 2 more attacks for Li Shui. It died. Fatty Suture the Freak died. Kairehan's HP finally dropped below 200 points. His dark blue skin was covered with a layer of bloody light. After charging for a short time, the two spears shot out from his hands, attacking Bai Xiaowen and Li Shi's vital points. This was obviously a throwing skill. As a long-range attacker, Bai Xiaowen's reaction time was slightly longer. While predicting and dodging in advance, he also activated the additional skill of Judge's Determination, Shelter, and gained a layer of shield that could block 44 points of damage, Constitution *2. Pissed. The shield burst like a soap bubble, and the short spear did not slow down and hit Bai Xiaowen's shoulder. Half of Bai Xiaowen's body went numb, and his HP dropped by more than 40 points. After deducting armor and other damage reduction, this attack had actually caused close to 90 points of actual damage. It was terrifying. Li Shi's mind was a little blank. Although she had high agility, she was in melee range, and basically had no time to react. The flying spear pierced her heart. Li Shi's overall armor was similar to Bai Xiaowen's, and this attack was probably close to 90 points of damage. Li Shi's HP. And calm. Through Bai Xiaowen's spiritual connection, a voice sounded, "Don't be afraid, you won't die." A.N. Note. Li. A. Li. You have received a vital attack. Your gold equipment, Levitation Necklace, S skill, Levitation, has been activated. This attack's damage has been forcibly reduced by 30%. You have received 62 points of mixed damage, and severe bleeding has occurred. Your attack speed and movement speed have been increased by 30%, and your attack power has been reduced by 50%. Lasts for 10 seconds. Li Shi quickly drank a hemostasis potion and rushed to attack. After the levitation effect was activated, Li Shi's body became much lighter. The speed of his two swords became even more terrifying, and he left behind afterimages. He was not far behind Kairehan, who had 70 points of agility. Although his attack power had been reduced by half, Li Shi was still in the demonic flame dance's damage increasing state. Every attack had an additional 12 points of theoretical fire damage. With his attack speed greatly increased, his damage output had increased. When Bai Xiaowen shouted, "You will not die," he endured the pain of his shoulder being pierced and activated Talisman Switch. A yellow talisman flew out of his hand. Clang! Kairehan was already an arrow at the end of its flight, and he was directly hit by the bewitching talisman. The bewitching talisman failed without a doubt, but the stun effect that followed was still too. 5 seconds after the Blood Spear War flag passively reduced the stun duration by 40%. Bai Xiaowen rushed forward, holding the gun with both hands to Kairehan's heart, and activated rapid fire mode to shoot wildly. His strength had reached 45 points, and the damage of every shot had also increased by a large margin. Kairehan's heart was bleeding like a fountain. Bai Xiaowen shot wildly for 2 seconds, and at the last moment of the stun duration, he put away his gun and suddenly jumped up, activating White Eagle's Assault's additional skill, Glide. Kairehan was taller than the average troll, about 2.5 meters tall. However, Bai Xiaowen's jump was more than 2 meters high. He kicked Kairehan's chin, and the Blood Spear Warlord's body was lifted off the ground. Immediately after, Bai Xiaowen twisted his body in the air and kicked Kairehan a second time, lifting him into the air. Grassland-style ancient martial arts, 75 styles, modified. At this time, Bai Xiaowen's strength was 45 points, which had already surpassed Kairehan's. With Glide's additional 50% kick damage, these two kicks each caused more than 40 points of actual damage. The power was astonishing. More importantly, due to the suppression of strength, after Kairehan was kicked away, his entire body was filled with strength, and he fell into a paralyzed state, unable to defend himself at all. As a super hard stun, the duration would not be reduced by skills such as the Blood Spear War flag. Of course, Li Shi would not let go of this rare opportunity to deal damage, and continued to attack. In the last few seconds of the devilish fire dance, he continuously stabbed a large number of fine wounds on Kairhan's body. 5 stacks of Mark of Thunder explode. Accumulated fire force from the devilish fire jade pendants plus 7 special effect explode. Kairhan suddenly vomited a mouthful of blood in the air, and the wounds all over his body spurted blood. Above his head, an astonishing damage value suddenly appeared, 114. Blood Spear Warlord, Death Hunter Kairhan, dead. Kairhan has been killed. Bai Xiaowen first shouted this shocking news in the language of the survivors, and then shouted in the common language, "All troops, charge!" Seeing Kairhan fall to the ground dead, the trolls fell into a temporary trance, and their morale plummeted. However, some of the trolls quickly reacted and went into a berserk state, wanting to avenge their leader, Kairhan. Bai Xiaowen reached out to grab Kairhan's golden treasure chest, and seeing the troll warriors swarming over, he swung his hand and blasted out Orochi. The turbulent waves of fire burned the troll warriors with low HP, and the original blocking formation no longer existed. The remaining 30 or so knights launched their final charge. "Xiaowen, what are you going to do?" Li Shi suddenly realized that Bai Xiaowen's warhorse had died in battle, and hurriedly handed his horse's reins over. "You go first, I can run faster than you." Bai Xiaowen was just about to speak when a vicious gust of wind came from behind. 3 troll warriors, in order to avenge their leader, recklessly used the blood-burst assassination skill, and 3 blood-red spears shot towards Bai Xiaowen's back. At this time, Bai Xiaowen, after a series of fierce battles, only had a skeleton mage left among the group of summoned creatures. His movements were still relatively slow, and there was no one to help him block the attacks. Boss Dior. Kits, who was on the side, suddenly rushed over. Chi! 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 The 3 blood-red spears hit Kits at almost the same time. Kit's HP instantly dropped to the bottom, and he was also inflicted with a heavy bleeding effect. "Damn it!" Bai Xiaowen roared in anger and put away the last use of the Deathman's Cry scroll. "Bonita!" Bonita raised her hand and cast Holy Hand from afar, slightly increasing Kit's HP. At the same time, Bai Xiaowen cast the second Orochi spell, and a dozen troll warriors, who were already low on HP, were burned to ashes. The remaining troll warriors, intimidated by Bai Xiaowen's 2 powerful spells in a row, all had the intention to retreat and hesitated, not daring to advance. "Boss Lord. I'm about to die." Kits panted. There were 3 terrifying bloody holes in his chest, and it was difficult for him to breathe. However, there was an ugly smile on his face. "I'm good enough, aren't I? Don't waste your energy. Ride my horse and go quickly." "Shut up." "No, open your mouth, don't speak." Bai Xiaowen's heart was filled with mixed feelings. He quickly opened a bottle of hemostatic potion and poured it into Kit's mouth, then used bandages to wrap his wounds. However, it was useless. Kit's had 3 layers of heavy bleeding, and the hemostatic potion could only remove 1 layer. Bai Xiaowen wanted to continue feeding Kit's hemostatic potion, but he received a notification that the combat potion had entered cooldown and could not be used again. "Why?" Bai Xiaowen asked. "You're my boss." Kit's had a brilliant smile on his face. "Moreover, compared to a rotten person like me, I feel that you're more useful to live on." Kit's raised his head to look at the northern sky and murmured, "Is this what it feels like to be a hero? Not bad at all." Bai Xiaowen calmed down. "Kits, now there's a way for you to live on in another form of life. Are you willing to do it?" "Boss, I don't quite understand what you're saying." Kits came back to his senses and chuckled. "However, what's there to be unhappy about if I can live on? I hope you won't regret it." Bai Xiaowen's fingers touched the black soul stone. "Della Fa. I want to absorb Kit's soul and keep his consciousness intact." Delafa's face appeared on the surface of the black soul stone, and he said awkwardly, "Master, to absorb the soul of a target that you haven't killed or contributed to, you need the target to not resist, and it won't increase the growth rate of the black soul stone. Moreover, to keep his consciousness intact, I've never tried it before, so I can't guarantee the success rate. Don't mention difficulties to me, you must succeed. Bai Xiaowen said, gritting his teeth. Delifa was startled, and quickly nodded. Yes, master, I'll do my best. Please follow the steps I've told you. Bai Xiaowen nodded, and according to Delifa's instructions, he pointed the black soul stone at Kit's eyes, and then instructed Kit not to have any thoughts of resistance. Kit's life points were depleted, and he died. His lifeless eyes were still staring at the black soul stone. Bai Xiaowen closed Kit's eyes. Delifa, how is it? I'm trying to preserve his consciousness. Master, this will take a long time, and it will consume a certain amount of soul essence, please allow me. Delifa's voice was intermittent. Allow. Bai Xiaowen said in a low voice. In the far north, smoke and dust were rolling. The pursuing troops of the remnant army were about to arrive. Bai Xiaowen didn't have time to wait for the result. He jumped onto Kit's horse, and led the knights to charge towards Black Rock City. Black Rock City was full of jubilation. Nicholas personally welcomed them, and then ordered the city gates to be closed. Amidst the cheers, he said loudly, "Let us welcome the return of the human heroes with a warm round of applause." The applause was thunderous. The noble ladies and madams below clasped their hands over their hearts, and looked at Bai Xiaowen with stars in their eyes. Bai Xiaowen received a notification. Grade A Elite Mission, Ambush the Enemy's Rear has been submitted. Progress, excellent. Your team has received 1,500 merit points. Your reputation in the Human Alliance camp has greatly increased. Current reputation level, Reverence, unchanged. Please choose one item from the following items as your additional reward. Among the 3 items to choose from, there were Grade A+ items and Gold Grade equipment, and their value was not low. However, Bai Xiaowen saw the special item Oath of Shattering at a glance, and chose it without hesitation. Now, Bai Xiaowen had 4 Oath of Shattering items, and he only needed 3 more to complete the Oath of Black Peak mission, and obtain the permanent party establishment item Oath of Black Peak. Bai Xiaowen sighed inwardly. Fortunately, he was not satisfied with a low completion rate. If he returned after destroying 4 strongholds, he would probably only be rewarded with reputation and merit points, and the range of the rewards would probably be reduced. After all, it was a qualified completion rate. Of course, it was unrealistic to pursue a perfect completion rate. If he delayed for too long, he would not be able to return if the main forces of the survivors surrounded him. For this mission, he had to find a balance between the degree of completion and the degree of safety. After receiving the reward, amid the applause, a female overlord in white armor walked over in full view of everyone. She stretched out her arms and hugged Bai Xiaowen. She ignored the sweat and blood on his face and kissed him. It was Cecilia. Cheers and whistles rose and fell one after another. The hero returned in triumph, and the beauty offered him a kiss. This kind of joke was the most popular. Li Shi gritted his teeth. Bai Xiaowen received a prompt. Overlord Cecilia's favorability towards you has greatly increased. Her current favorability level is close friend. Overlord Cecilia's favorability towards you has greatly increased. Her current favorability level is love. Based on Cecilia's favorability level towards you, you can now invite her to join your territory and fight for you. Bai Xiaowen was stunned. He did not expect that after going out for a while, he would come back to the love level. Her favorability had increased much faster than getting along with each other day and night. Was this the rumored, absence makes the heart grow fonder? Distance made her miss him? As for joining his territory, forget it. Cecilia was a lord herself, and there was no such precedent, unless the two of them were united by marriage. Cecilia was still natural and unrestrained amidst the uproar, and there was no shyness on her beautiful face. She held Bai Xiaowen's arm and left. Chapter 291. Bai Xiaowen only slept for 2 or 3 hours before waking up. He stretched his body and felt that he had fully recovered. Delifa's voice came from the Black Soul Stone. Master, you're awake? How's the situation? You sound pretty good. Bai Xiaowen said. I didn't disappoint Master. That person called Keats' consciousness wasn't damaged at all, similar to the zombie doctor. Delifa took credit. Master, I did my best. Well done. Bai Xiaowen praised. Then, I used a little bit of soul essence. You can't blame me. Delifa smiled charmingly. How much is a little bit? It's only 50. Delifa giggled. I understand. Let Keats talk to me. Bai Xiaowen said. This price wasn't unacceptable. After the battle with Bloodspear warlord Kelhan, the Black Soul Stone's growth had reached 209 points of soul essence. Delifa used 50 points, leaving 159 points of soul essence. Very quickly, Keats' image appeared on the surface of the Black Soul Stone. Boss Lord. Keats. Bai Xiaowen still had complicated feelings. Why did you rush over and block the attack for me? I didn't think too much at the time. Keats shrugged, but before I died, the memories of this life flashed before my eyes, and I kind of understood. It's probably because I had a boring dream of becoming a knight since I was young. When I followed Boss Ian in the cave, I really felt that this was the way my life would be. But then I met Boss Lord. To be honest, I wasn't very loyal at first, but after Boss made me a knight, my thoughts gradually changed. Keats grinned. I really didn't expect that a rotten person like me could become a knight, a noble. Boss, I still have to thank you for making my dream come true. Bai Xiaowen was silent for a while. In fact, even if Keats hadn't rushed over, Bai Xiaowen would have used Dead Man's Scream to summon elite terror knights to block in front of him, and he would have been fine. However, there was no need to say this to Keats. After all, Keats had already died once. If he knew that his sacrifice didn't have much meaning, that would be a heavy blow to his spirit. Boss, where are we? Keats looked around, then looked at Bai Xiaowen. How did you become so big? Listen well, Keats. Bai Xiaowen said. You're now in soul form, and I've absorbed you into a Black Soul Stone. My origin is. There was no one else in the room, so Bai Xiaowen told them that he came from Earth and that he was an awakened. After explaining for about 10 minutes, Keats was still dumbfounded. Do you understand? Bai Xiaowen panted and took a sip of water. I don't really understand. However, in the future, I'll follow Boss Dior. I'll chop whoever you tell me to chop, right? Keats scratched his head. For a dead person, that doesn't seem too bad. That's about it. Bai Xiaowen didn't bother to explain further. The natives of the spiritual realm were the plot characters. Some people knew about the concept of planes, and knew that other than the world they lived in, there were other planes. However, most people didn't know. This had to do with the cultural background of the plane and the popularization of knowledge. For example, the Three Kingdoms plane was set in the ancient Huaxia, at the end of the Eastern Han Dynasty. Most people believed that the sky was square and the earth was square, and didn't have any concept of other planes. Those who knew about the existence of other planes were probably only mysterious people like the Nanhua Old Immortal. If it was the plane world set in ancient Europe, the knowledge that mages learned included different planes, so there were more people who knew about other planes. The natives of the Aran plane world could even travel back and forth between Earth and the Aran world through some special means. This was due to the difference in cultural background. Then there was the popularization of knowledge. Did the ordinary people of the Aran plane and Cain plane know about the concept of planes? Most people didn't know, because they didn't receive any systematic education in magic, like Keats. Bai Xiaowen opened the Black Soul Stone Strengthening Atlas and said to Keats, I don't have the ability to revive you. I don't have the ability to bring the dead back to life. I can only provide you with a carrier of an undead creature to carry your soul consciousness. There are two choices here. You can take a look. The third level of the Black Soul Stone Strengthening Atlas, Strengthening Option 3, New Summon Creature of the Blood Race, Vampire *1. Vampire has an elite template. Requires 100 soul essence. The 4th level of the Black Soul Stone Strengthening Atlas, Strengthening Option 2, New Summon Creature of the Bone Race, Skeleton Warrior *1. Skeleton Warrior has an elite template. Requires 150 soul essence. Become an undead? Kits was stunned. Then I can't eat meat and drink wine in the future? In theory, there shouldn't be any need. Bai Xiaowen nodded. Then, we can't have sex? Kit said an indescribable word, his face full of despair. Bai Xiaowen was stunned. He hadn't considered this problem before. He thought for a while and said, if you choose the bone race, you shouldn't have any tools to commit crimes. However, if it's the blood race, it should be okay? Actually, Bai Xiaowen wasn't too sure. According to the Western fantasy background, vampires should have reproductive abilities, right? Then I'll choose the vampire. Kits didn't hesitate. Bai Xiaowen, don't you need to think about it again? Actually, the skeleton warrior should be stronger than the vampire. After all, 150 soul essence was better than 100. Moreover, a burly man like Kits should be more suitable for a strength-type skeleton warrior. A creature like the vampire that walked the path of agility didn't match his style. If you don't have balls, then there's no fun no matter how strong you are, boss. Bai Xiaowen respected Kit's opinion. He raised his hand and lit up the 3rd layer of the Black Soul Stone's Atlas, Strengthening Option 3, and then chose to summon. The black fog spread, and a pale-skinned, lanky man wearing a double-breasted suit appeared in front of Bai Xiaowen. His eye sockets were a bit sunken, as if he was wearing black eyeliner. Fuse, Delafa. Remember to use Kit's consciousness as the main force, Bai Xiaowen said. Delafa said confidently, Master, don't worry. I have experience. Kit's soul turned into a black fog and flew into the lanky vampire's body. Instantly, large clouds of black fog gushed out. Just then, there was a knock on the door. The black fog churned in the room, as if it was the scene of a cult ceremony. Bai Xiaowen's heart thumped. If Cecilia saw this, wouldn't her favorability and loyalty plummet? Who is it? It's me. Li Shi's voice sounded. Bai Xiaowen relaxed and opened the door to welcome him. Li Shi walked in, rubbing his eyes. He looked like he had just woken up, just like Bai Xiaowen. How was your rest? Li Shi was shocked to see the black fog churning. The fusion took only a short time and was completed quickly. The tall and lanky vampire's appearance had changed greatly. It was as if he had been inflated, expanding horizontally. His muscles were thick, and he was about the same size as Kit's original body. The biggest change was his face. The original vampire's face was pale, and he had thin eyebrows and eyes, giving him a submissive temperament. But now, the vampire Kit's facial contours were very similar to the original bandit Kit's. They both had thick, knife-shaped eyebrows and a full beard. This was probably the most rugged vampire Bai Xiaowen had ever seen. It was a bit different from the vampires he had seen in movies from another time and space. Boss, did I succeed? The vampire Kits moved his hands and feet. The first thing he did was to touch his crotch. Then he laughed mischievously and said, it feels pretty good. Seeing this, Li Shi was a bit embarrassed and spat lightly. Ah, Miss is also here. Sorry. Kits had just touched his crotch and scratched his head. Alright, why don't you go find a chick to test your ability in some aspect? Bai Xiaowen threw a purse to Kits and kicked him. Also, don't tell anyone about my background. That's an order. Okay. Kits took the purse and happily left. After the vampire Kits left, Li Shi and Bai Xiaowen sat side by side on the edge of the bed. You really gave me a fright yesterday. But what surprised me even more was that Kits was actually willing to give up his life for you, Li Shi said. This kind of loyalty is indeed worth the effort you put in to revive him. It can't be considered resurrection. It's just another life form, another life, Bai Xiaowen said. This new life will be even more exciting than Kit's life as a bandit in the Kane Planar world, but it will also be more dangerous. I hope kits won't regret it in the future. Bai Xiaowen checked kit's stats. Vampire kits, Elite Level 4, Race, Undead/Blood Clan, Attributes, Strength 16, Agility 23, Constitution 16, Spirit 9, Asterisk, including Shaman's bonus and Spirit's bonus, Skill 1, Cursed Body, Racial Ability, Passive. Vampires' holy damage and magic penetration damage are increased by 50%. Physical damage from silver weapons is increased by 50%. Other types of damage are reduced by 50%. The duration of all bleeding effects is forcibly reduced by 50%. Skill 2, Night Walker, Passive. Vampire's blood boils in a sunlight environment, all attributes reduced by 20%. When moving at night, all attributes increased by 20%. Active activation of this skill allows one to transform into a swarm of bats and fly for a short period of time. After the effect ends, one's body will be reformed. During this period of time, every bat lost will reduce one's HP. Skill 3, Bloodthirst Attack, Passive. 20% of all damage dealt by the vampire will be converted into HP to heal the vampire. The Elite Vampire kit's stats were average, but he had 3 practical passive skills. The Cursed Body was even stronger than the Shadow Assassin's, Body of Nothingness. Body of Nothingness, s 50% reduction in physical damage had saved the Shadow Assassin's fragile little life more than once from the boss attacks. Everyone who used it said it was good. Night Walker was destined to be the most suitable for moving at night. However, transforming into a swarm of bats was a very good life-saving skill against physical attacks. As for the last skill, Bloodthirst, it was the first passive skill Bai Xiaowen had ever seen with the lifesteal effect. The effect was also very strong, as high as 20%. Actually, binding the vampire kits to a shared life was also a pretty good choice. Bai Xiaowen then took out the golden treasure chest dropped by the Bloodspear warlord, Kairhan, and chose to open it. Enemy's strength is based on battle score. You have received 3 chances to draw the spoils of war, and there will be no free passes. Light flashed, and a total of 16 golden cards were formed. So many cards, Kairhan is indeed the leader of the clan. Bai Xiaowen sighed and opened one first. You have received a special item, Sealed Letter. This letter had no name, only a skull image. 2 soulfires seemed to be jumping. It was clearly a rather advanced magic effect, and could be considered Kane's version of an anti-counterfeiting symbol. You draw the other 2 rewards first. I'll take a look at this letter. Bai Xiaowen opened the letter and began to read. The content of the letter was very short, but the amount of information it contained was shocking. This was an order from the master to Kairhan. From the 78% undead status on Kairhan, Bai Xiaowen speculated that he was related to the master of the Plague of the Undead, and now it was confirmed as expected. The master was called the Plague Lord, and he was the one who sent the plague spreader to infiltrate the northern border. The letter mentioned that the plague toxin had already spread to all parts of the northern border, and the first batch of awakened plague undead army was already on the way. Bai Xiaowen then received a notification from the spiritual realm's rules. You have received important information about the attack plan of the survivors from Kairhan's spoils of war. You can give this letter to Prince Nicholas or Archbishop Arlo, and you will receive 1,500 achievement points. Bai Xiaowen put away the sealed letter. What the hell? Is an S-level main mission so difficult? Plague Undead Army. How many people were there in the northern border, and how many would there be if they were transformed into Plague Undead? Fortunately, the transformation of humans into Plague Undead was a gradual process, and not a complete transformation all at once. On the other hand, Li Shi also drew the remaining 2 cards, a gold equipment, and an item. Tribal Feather Cloak, bound after pickup, grade, hero, gold, equipment position, back, equipment requirements, none, equipment attributes, back armor +3, evasion rate +3%, additional skill, glide. When falling from a high place, the feathers will spread to obtain a 30-second gliding effect, greatly reducing the falling speed and changing direction in the air. Durability description: the tribal warriors will weave their crowns and cloaks with beautiful feathers. This is proof of honor. Since Li Shi already had a gold, dazzling cloak, he gave this cloak to Bai Xiaowen to replace the dirty cloak he was wearing. In the awakened stage, most people did not have the ability to fly, and the glide skill could save lives at critical moments. The other item was a silver item. Although it was only a B-level silver item, it was equivalent to a normal S-level item. Generally speaking, the value of a silver item was 2 grades higher. Blood Spear Horn. Blow the horn to summon a group of Blood Spear Spearmen's ancestral spirits to attack the enemy's formation. Lasts for 30 seconds. Number of uses available, 2 halves. B-level silver item. On the surface, there was nothing special about this Blood Spear Horn. It was a little unworthy of its value as a silver item. Bai Xiaowen did not pay too much attention to it and put it away. Chapter 292. Convene a high-level military meeting immediately. Nicholas's expression changed when he received the letter, and he immediately shouted to his clerk, Basil Heber, beside him. The decision-makers of Black Rock City quickly rushed to the small conference room for the second military meeting. As Bai Xiaowen's assistant and sister, as well as the hero of this surprise attack, Li Shi was also specially allowed to attend this military meeting. Time was of the essence, so Nicholas went straight to the point. There's a new situation regarding the defense of Black Rock Fortress. Baron Dior, please explain it briefly. Bai Xiaowen nodded and said, everyone here should know about the Plague of the Dead. Previously, we doubted whether the Plague of the Dead had anything to do with the survivors. Now, there's conclusive evidence that the Plague of the Dead was a virus war started by the survivors. At least, the mastermind behind the Plague of the Dead is on the side of the survivors. Bai Xiaowen then told everyone about the Blood Spear warlord, Kelhan, and the troll warriors under his command being undead. These filthy beasts. Damn bastards. In the small conference room, there were endless curses, but the nobles and clergymen were obviously not good at cursing. They kept using words like filthy and lowly. When everyone was done cursing, Bai Xiaowen said, after killing the Blood Spear warlord, I intercepted an important piece of information. The Plague of the Dead has already spread widely in the northern borderline. Currently, the first batch of the Plague of the Dead is rushing towards the Black Boulder defense line. Obviously, this has confirmed our previous conjecture, which is that the undead creatures affected by the plague are under the control of the mastermind behind all this, the Lord of Plague. In other words, what we're going to face next is not only those beasts, but also countless Plague of the Dead. Count Dendon's face darkened as he inhaled a cold breath. Great. Shouldn't we discuss how to die with dignity? I suggest we abandon the city and return to the capital. Nicholas's chief of staff cleared his throat and said. Li Shi's heart skipped a beat as he looked at Bai Xiaowen. If the chief of staff's suggestion came true, how would he complete the second main mission, Black Lava Nation's Flames of War? It was simply unrealistic for Bai Xiaowen and her to fight against the survivors and the Plague Army. However, Bai Xiaowen's expression was calm, and he had no intention of speaking. Li Shi could only suppress the doubts in her heart and said no more. Nicholas shook his head. Abandoning the city is tantamount to surrendering the entire northern border to the allied forces of the remnants. I won't do that. The magic consultant said, forgive me for being blunt, Your Highness, but I don't see any hope of victory in this war. Therefore, we should take a step back and preserve the strength of the Imperial Army. Also, your safety is very important. The Chief of Staff replied, that's right. The Plague Undead are fearsome creatures that don't sleep and feel no pain. Although they aren't very strong, they are the best cannon fodder for sieges. This was only the first batch. There was still a second batch and a third batch to follow. They can completely wear us down. Bai Xiaowen opened his mouth and said, Your Highness, Archbishop, I have a plan to deal with the Plague Undead. What plan? In the conference room, everyone's eyes were filled with hope at the same time. I'm sorry, but this plan is of great importance. I can only let Your Highness and Archbishop Arlo have a look. Bai Xiaowen took out a piece of parchment that he had written in advance and handed it to Nicholas. Nicholas took the parchment and read the plan carefully. His face quickly became dignified, and his eyebrows were almost knitted together. Archbishop Arlo leaned over and read it together. At first, the old man was quite benevolent, but after a few glances, his expression quickly changed. He kept looking up at Bai Xiaowen, and his expression was somewhat agitated, and even angry. Everyone in the conference room craned their necks like chickens and ducks waiting to be fed. Finally, the two bigwigs finished reading. This is really a crazy plan. However, carrying out this plan requires a lot of preparation work. I don't think we have the time now. Nicholas sighed. I'm glad that we don't have to decide whether to carry it out or not. Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, No, I've already done the preparation work in advance. Prince Nicholas's expression changed drastically, and he stood up immediately. You're too bold, Dior. How dare you do this without my permission? Please rest assured, Your Highness, Bai Xiaowen said calmly. I've only prepared for it. I haven't carried it out. Archbishop Arlo could not sit still anymore. He stood up and said, I strongly oppose this plan. If we do this, how are we different from those beasts abandoned by God? Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, Archbishop, if there's a chance of survival, I don't want to carry out this crazy plan. However, this is the only way to fight against the survivors and the plague undead. Compared to this, I'd rather take the Chief of Staff's suggestion and abandon the city and leave, Archbishop Arlo said. And then? Hand all the humans in the northern borderline to those beasts to be their food? Bai Xiaowen's words were also very sharp. Stop arguing. Nicholas's expression changed, as if he was going through an intense mental struggle. Then, let's leave it to His Highness to decide. I'll reiterate again, without His Highness's orders, I won't carry out this plan. Bai Xiaowen took the parchment back and folded it under the watchful eyes of everyone in the conference room. Your Highness, don't make us the sinners of humanity. Archbishop Arlo exerted pressure on Nicholas. Bai Xiaowen remained silent. He believed that practical pressure was more effective than verbal pressure. Who was Nicholas? He was the Cain version of Arthas who could give the order to massacre a city without batting an eyelid. He didn't immediately agree to this plan. He probably still had some hope that they would be able to defend the Black Rock Fortress through normal means. Finally, Nicholas spoke. Don't carry out this plan. Without waiting for Archbishop Arlo to catch his breath, Nicholas added another sentence. Not for now. After saying these 4 words, Nicholas exhaled and sat back in his chair. He was no longer in the mood to continue the meeting. He waved his hand and dismissed everyone, return to your posts and prepare for battle. Dior, and your sister, please stay. Soon, only Nicholas, Bai Xiaowen, and Li Shi were left in the conference room. Dior, what preparations have you made for this plan? Bai Xiaowen thought for a while and selectively told Nicholas some details of the preparations. In other words, you've already started preparing when you were in Maple City. Nicholas smiled bitterly. I really don't know if I should praise you. Your foresight may become a nightmare for humanity. But it will first become a nightmare for the enemy, Bai Xiaowen said. Chapter 293. The atmosphere in the meeting room froze. Li Shi's expression changed. The laws of the Netherworld had repeatedly warned them not to reveal their identities as non-residents of the Netherworld. Otherwise, they would have to bear the consequences. She then looked at Bai Xiaowen. Bai Xiaowen's expression was calm. For some reason, Li Shi's emotions calmed down. When did Your Highness find out? Bai Xiaowen asked. Nicholas replied, it was in Maple City, right after our first meeting through the communication rune. Bai Xiaowen asked, has Your Highness been suspicious of me since then? Nicholas shook his head. No, but for someone like you who has risen to prominence, I definitely need to understand you to a certain extent. Nicholas took out a sealed report from a drawer. The words Dior Escale Bloom were written on it. The first report was very brief. It only mentioned Baron Dior Escale Bloom's past, and that he had never shown any talent in magic. As for his sister, Charlotte, she was just an ordinary and delicate girl. However, during the battle at Maple City, many people mentioned that you were a powerful magus, and that your sister had become a valiant warrior. The changes during this period are really too sudden. Bai Xiaowen nodded. Nicholas continued, and after you came to the Black Rock stronghold, I paid close attention to you. The military talent you displayed also surprised me. Moreover, the tactical ideas you came up with were very different from the ones we already have. While they were novel and effective, they were also very different. According to the records, Baron Dior S. Kalebloom had studied at a noble academy in the imperial capital. However, only his name was recorded in the records, and he did not show any outstanding military prowess. Nicholas smiled and concluded, so, I'm sure that you're a traveler from another plane, and so is your sister. Don't be nervous. There have been travelers from other planes and other parts of the Empire before, and they were all recorded in the Imperial archives. You're not the first. Bai Xiaowen sighed softly, Your Highness, no matter who I am, one thing has not changed. Everything I have done is for the sake of resisting the Sin Domain allied armies. As an awakened who cut in with a primitive identity, it was sometimes inevitable that their identity would be seen through by the natives. If he wanted to obtain a relatively generous harvest in a short period of 10 days, he would have to act in a high-profile manner. This would definitely not match the historical performance of his identity. The more he was in front of the higher-ups of the indigenous people, the easier it was for him to be seen through. In the Cane Plain, which had a cultural background that included dimensional travel, people like Prince Nicholas could be considered as one of the higher-ups among the natives. He had a high IQ to begin with, and he had access to a large number of intelligence files. In addition, there were precedents of awakened ones being seen through before. It would be abnormal if he wasn't discovered. Bai Xiaowen had considered the possibility of his identity being exposed, but he didn't think it was a big deal. The reason was because of the general trend. If the human camp dominated and suppressed the survivors, then visitors from another plane like Bai Xiaowen would be at risk of being caught and dissected for research. However, in the current northern frontier, the survivors had the upper hand, and it was a considerable advantage. In addition, Bai Xiaowen had also shown his value in the process of fighting against the survivors, and his reputation was real. Even if Prince Nicholas was curious about the other plane, he would not attack Bai Xiaowen and Bai Xiaowen now. In order to fight against the Sin Domain allied armies and the undead of pestilence, he had to unite the forces of every human camp. Yes, I have seen everything you have done, Nicholas said, but what I don't understand is, as a traveler from another plane, why are you working so hard for the human camp? Bai Xiaowen showed a deep expression, Your Highness, because I am also a human. Nicholas was silent for a moment, then he walked over and held Bai Xiaowen's hand, Thank you. Of course, if I can get some remuneration when I assist Your Highness, I will not refuse. Bai Xiaowen coughed and said. Li Shi showed an expression of I knew it. Nicholas was not surprised. For him, if Bai Xiaowen did not ask for anything, he would be worried. He said straightforwardly, Well, what do you want from me? Your Highness, I am very interested in the Ebon Edge Knights. I have been collecting the odes of the Ebon Edge Knights, but they are all incomplete. I hope to get a complete version. Bai Xiaowen opened his mouth and asked for the Oath of the Ebon Edge, a permanent team-building prop. If he could get it from Nicholas, he would not have to do the side quest. Nicholas frowned and said, What you want should be the magic scroll that carries the oaths of the Ebon Edge Knights. Every new Ebon Edge Knight will sign his own name on the magic scroll, and the oaths he makes have a strong binding force. However, there is only one complete version of the Oath of the Ebon Edge Scroll, which is currently stored in the Imperial capital and cannot be given to you. Bai Xiaowen could only settle for the next best thing. Then give me a few more incomplete versions of the oaths. He took out a copy of the Oath of Shattering and showed it to Nicholas. That can be done. Nicholas said with some sadness. After I came to the northern frontier, some of the Ebon Edge Knights who followed me have fallen. I have also kept their oaths when they were alive. If they knew that these oaths when they were alive could contribute to the human alliance after death, they would be very gratified. After a pause, Nicholas said, "If you can help defend the Black Lava Fortress and hold on until the Imperial reinforcements arrive, I will give you all 3 oaths that I have kept." Bai Xiaowen received a new mission notification. Main mission, the War of the Black Lava Fortress has been updated. Mission reward, Oath of Shattering X3. Originally, the reward for this S-rank main mission was unknown, which meant that the Awakened had to negotiate with the Aborigines to obtain the mission reward. Now, with Nicholas' words, Bai Xiaowen had locked in the content of the mission reward in advance. 3 temporary team-building props that were as high as level 6 were indeed worthy of the difficulty of an S-rank mission. Moreover, with 7 Oaths of Shattering, he could piece together a copy of the Oath of the Ebon Edge, which was a permanent team-building prop. Chapter 294. Nicholas and Bai Xiaowen had a showdown in order to dispel Bai Xiaowen's concerns and obtain more details. Bai Xiaowen could reveal more details now that he no longer had to hide his identity as a visitor from another world. The two of them discussed for a long time. Finally, Nicholas said, "I agree with your umbrella plan in principle. However, now is not the time to start it." Bai Xiaowen nodded in understanding. For example, Archbishop Arlo was in existence that even Nicholas had to respect. His firm opposition would definitely attract a large number of people to stand on his side. Nicholas also had to consider his own future and could not be stubborn. However, Nicholas allowed Bai Xiaowen to act at his discretion. Under Bai Xiaowen's request, he even issued a special warrant. All activities undertaken by the holder of this warrant are related to the survival of the human race. For this reason, he is allowed to act at will in any situation. No one is allowed to interfere, and the holder must try his best to provide convenience. Nicholas Kane, November 29, 1021. Bai Xiaowen and Li Shi bid farewell and left. When Bai Xiaowen reached the entrance of the Lord's mansion in Black Rock City, he realized that a group of people was already waiting there. "Dior, how did it go? How did His Royal Highness react?" Cecilia did not attend the high-level military meeting this time. However, she had heard from others that Baron Dior had proposed a crazy plan. Even the usually kind Archbishop Arlo had expressed his opposition, which was rare. The outcome is the same as what was discussed in the meeting. "We will put it on hold for now," Bai Xiaowen said. "Then, what is the plan like?" Cecilia's eyes sparkled with curiosity. Even the usually cold and aloof White Rose could not hide her feminine nature in front of her lover. Bai Xiaowen looked around and saw that many people were waiting anxiously. This is not the place to talk. Bai Xiaowen led Cecilia and Li Shi back to their residence under the silent criticism of the crowd. He then passed the folded parchment proposal to Cecilia. While Cecilia was reading the plan, Bai Xiaowen had already summoned Keats back to her. With a bang, a disheveled Keats appeared in the room. He was only wearing a pair of large underpants, revealing his rough chest muscles. "What happened?" Keats looked around with a bewildered expression. Just a second ago, he had been lying on the bed, enjoying the aftertaste of pleasure. The next second, he had been locked in the little black room, and in the third second, he had appeared in front of his boss. This made Keats a bit stupefied. "I was the one who summoned you back," Bai Xiaowen explained briefly. "Boss, can you use a gentler method next time?" Keats said with a bitter face. "I don't have the patience to visit all the brothels in Black Rock City." Bai Xiaowen waved his hand and said, "Keats, I have a mission for you. Take this secret order and set out tonight to Red Leaf Hill." Keats' work attitude was clearly much more enthusiastic than Zombie Doctor's, and he wasn't annoyed that his sleep had been interrupted. After Bai Xiaowen told him the contents of the mission, he patted his chest and promised to complete it, then went to catch up on his sleep. It was daytime now, and as a vampire, Keats had all his attributes reduced by 20%. Moreover, although Black Rock City wasn't surrounded, there should be enemy scouts nearby. It would be safer to leave at night, as the night was the vampire Keats' home field. At this moment, Cecilia had already finished reading the plan. She was usually calm and rarely surprised, but now her face was full of shock. Dior, is everything written here true? This is only the rough outline of the plan. Cecilia, remember to keep it a secret, Bai Xiaowen said. But, is there no other way? Cecilia said. Cecilia, you have to remember, as long as there's a glimmer of hope, I won't start this damned plan. Bai Xiaowen could only reiterate. Although this is a very extreme plan, I'm willing to believe you, Dior. Cecilia understood how much resistance there was against this plan in Black Rock City, but she made her stance clear. The effect of a good friend's affection and a love interest's affection was truly impressive. Cecilia, if I wasn't a lord, or even a person of this continent or plane of existence, what would you think of me? Bai Xiaowen remembered the problem of his identity. Since Prince Nicholas could see through it, then it was probably only a matter of time before others found out that he was a visitor from another plane. In Bai Xiaowen's plan, it was only a matter of time before he told Cecilia the truth. However, Cecilia seemed to have been mentally prepared. After a slight shock, she recovered her smile and said, Dior, I love you now, and it has nothing to do with your identity or origin. Cecilia's two arms circled Bai Xiaowen's neck, and her warm lips pressed against Bai Xiaowen's. In fact, when Cecilia and Bai Xiaowen danced, she felt a trace of doubt. Bai Xiaowen almost didn't know how to dance at all, and it was quite inconsistent with the rumored image of the Lord of Whitestone Town, Baron Dior, as a playboy, ahem. Li Shi coughed. Bai Xiaowen recovered from his shock and quickly let go of Cecilia's waist. He laughed awkwardly and said, I don't know when the next attack of the remnant people will start. I still have some areas to improve on in this plan. Cecilia, I need your help. Just say the word, Cecilia said. After the war, the Human Alliance Army tried to send troops out to repair the arrow towers. The remnant army spent a lot of money to destroy all the arrow towers on the periphery. Of course, it was impossible for them to sit back and watch the Human Alliance Army repair them. In the next 2 days, although there were no large-scale sieges, the small-scale battles were quite intense. In the end, under the interference of the remnant army, the Human Alliance Army only repaired a few arrow towers near the city gate, and the plan to reorganize the defense system fell through. On the 7th day of the defensive battle of Black Rock Fortress. In the early morning, the alarm bell on the city tower rang rapidly, waking people up from their sleep. They're coming. It's the undead. Countless undead. Climbing up the city tower, a group of high-level human officials looked from afar and were shocked. Before seeing the undead army of plague with their own eyes, it was difficult to imagine what an army of tens of thousands of undead looked like. Thousands of people filled the city and tens of thousands of people filled the field. These slow-moving, expressionless pestilence undead army filled the entire field. Woo woo woo, the horn sounded, and behind the army of the undead of pestilence, a team of elite survivors was fully armed and ready to attack the city. The enemy has entered the shooting range. Attack! Count Denton shouted loudly. The catapults on the city wall began to roar and throw stone shells. Groups of archers stood on the city wall and shot arrows like rain. However, these catapults and arrows were like pebbles in front of the endless sea of undead. They could not make any waves at all. After killing 1 or 10 undead army of plague, more undead army of plague would fill their empty positions in the next moment. Archbishop Arlo. Can you cast the theurgy again? Many nobles were desperate and cast a pleading look at Arlo. Archbishop Arlo's face was pale and he shook his head slowly. No matter how powerful Archbishop Arlo's forbidden spell was, it could not cover a battlefield with a diameter of several kilometers. According to Bai Xiaowen's understanding, a high-level spellcaster leader like him could play a decisive role in a small-scale battle. For example, on the first day. Now, the undead army had already surrounded the Blackrock fortress and filled up the entire plain. Even Archbishop Arlo could not do anything about it. This is only the first batch, Bai Xiaowen said to Nicholas. It will be too late to make a decision after Black Rock City is conquered. Nicholas' face was stiff and no expression could be seen. Li Shi tugged at Bai Xiaowen's sleeve and pulled him aside. He asked softly, "What if Nicholas does not agree in the end?" Bai Xiaowen replied softly, "I will start directly before the city is conquered." Bai Xiaowen would not place all his hopes on the natives of the spiritual realm. To him, the main mission, Flames of War in Black Rock City, had to be completed. This was the prerequisite for all the rewards in the second stage. The reason why he had to get Nicholas' approval was simple. Bai Xiaowen hoped that Nicholas would take the blame for him. This blame was too big and Bai Xiaowen's head was too small. Against the dense rain of arrows, the undead army of plague charged to the bottom of the city wall. The way they attacked the city wall was very willful. The undead army of plague that charged to the front would lie down at the bottom of the city wall. The ones behind would also lie down and use their bodies to form a mound of the dead. On the city wall, Archbishop Arlo and the rest were not unprepared. They used diluted holy water instead of boiling oil and poured it down. Bai Xiaowen's eyes twitched as he saw this. These were all shining white merit points. The diluted holy water was indeed effective against the undead. It was highly corrosive. Large patches of the undead army of plague's dead white skin started to fester. Their health points dropped rapidly as they died. However, under the control of the Lord of Pestilence, the spirits of pestilence were fearless and had lost their sense of pain. Regardless of whether boiling oil or holy water was poured over their heads, they remained unmoved. They faithfully carried out the Lord of Pestilence's orders and used their bodies to level the height of the city walls. "We can't let them charge over." "Charge!" The gates of the Black Rock Fortress opened. Count Denton and the other powerful warriors led the army in an attempt to break through the undead army of plague's defensive line. The individual combat power of these undead army of plague was actually very weak. They were basically beginner level. Count Denton led the Imperial Army's cavalry. Wherever they went, the undead army of plague would fall like wheat being harvested. However, this was of no use. For every undead army of plague that died, more undead army of plague would rush forward to fill the position. As for Count Denton's cavalry, if one of them was pulled down from his horse, he would be surrounded and beaten up. There was no chance of survival. Although a few charges had killed a large number of undead army of plague, it was meaningless to the overall battle situation. The bodies of the undead army of plague, regardless of whether they were dead or alive, were used as cushions at the foot of the city wall. Behind them, the orcs' wolf riders and the trolls' velociraptor hunters were already in formation. Once the undead army of plague was level with the city wall, with the agility and speed of these elites, they could ignore the city wall and charge directly into Black Rock Fortress. "Your Highness, let's abandon the fortress," the chief of staff and the magic consultant advised. Nicholas glanced at Archbishop Arlo. The latter shook his head at him expressionlessly. "Dior. Plan Umbrella, activate now." Nicholas' expression suddenly became cold and gloomy. He gritted his teeth and roared. "Yes, Your Highness." Bai Xiaowen had been waiting for this moment. He waved his hand and said, "City Defense Army, fall back. Whitestone Army, spray the ultimate plague bane." The City Defense Army, who had been shooting arrows and pouring oil on top of the city wall, all fell back and made way for them with Prince Nicholas' approval. The Whitestone Army soldiers, who had been preparing for a long time, appeared with large wooden buckets on their backs and water pipes in their hands. Ultimate plague bane? The human nobles were surprised. They had heard that the scholars under Bai Xiaowen had developed a series of plague bane drugs. The reason why Black Rock Fortress was able to completely eradicate the undead plague virus was all thanks to Bai Xiaowen's beginner, advanced and super plague bane drugs. However, they had never heard of the ultimate plague bane before. Could it be that Bai Xiaowen's plan umbrella was to cure these undead army of plague? Weren't the plague bane drugs only effective on humans who had yet to turn into undead? With doubts in their minds, the crowd watched as the Whitestone Army soldiers aimed the water pipes at the undead army of plague below and sprayed out streams of pale white liquid. The pale white liquid quickly seeped into the bodies of the undead army of plague. It doesn't seem to have any special effects. The crowd observed carefully, and someone cautiously commented. "Roar." As soon as he finished speaking, a beast-like roar came from below the city wall. The undead army of plague that had fallen suddenly stood up again. Even the undead army of plague that had died because their health points had been depleted were no exception. These beast-like, meaningless roars came from the undead army of plague that had stood up again. Compared to before, their bodies had not changed much, but their movements had become much stiffer. An unknown liquid flowed from the corners of their mouths, making them look even more disgusting. Cries of surprise rang out from the city wall. One of the undead army of plague that had stood up turned around and pounced on its former comrade. Before the comrade could react, the undead army of plague bit down viciously. The same action happened to the other undead army of plague that had stood up again. "Prepare the catapults." Bai Xiaowen waved his hand and gave the order. The catapults were equipped with specially made wooden buckets to replace the stone bullets. With a whoosh, they were thrown into the sea of undead army of plague in the distance. Chapter 295. Zombies? A lot of people were thinking about this new term. Zombies are infected creatures. They are also creatures of the undead race. Bai Xiaowen said, these infected creatures are very sensitive to all moving targets, including sound. Moreover, their teeth and claws also carry the virus of the ultimate plague killer. Those who are scratched or bitten by them will turn into zombies after a certain period of time. As if confirming Bai Xiaowen's explanation, the first batch of plague undead that had been knocked down by the zombies stood up in a wobbly manner not long after. They let out meaningless roars and joined the ranks of the counterattack. Then, these zombies, are they under your control? Lord Julian looked at Bai Xiaowen strangely and asked carefully. Unfortunately, they only act according to their instincts. Bai Xiaowen sighed. If he could control the zombies, he would not have to be so restrained. He could just gather an army of zombies, and it would not be a problem for him to defeat the 2 camps in Beijiang. He would definitely get a lot of treasure chests. If that's the case, the Lord of Plague, who is hiding behind the scenes, will not be able to control these zombies. Lord Julian suddenly laughed. That's not bad. Let the zombies kill the undead and the survivors. We have the protection of the city wall, so we will be safe. Archbishop Arlo suddenly said, but, what about the other humans in Beijiang, especially those who live in villages and do not have city walls? I remember that Baron Dior mentioned in his plan that the ultimate plague bane that you developed is highly contagious, and it can spread through the air. It won't be long before the humans in the northern borderline who haven't been bitten by the zombies will become zombies. There was a moment of silence. Bai Xiaowen said calmly, Archbishop Arlo, I repeat, only the humans who are infected with the undead plague virus will be affected by the ultimate plague killer. If they are not infected with the virus, they will not be transformed. That does not mean anything. Aren't the infected people God's people? They still have a chance to be cured. Arlo said. Cured? How? Bai Xiaowen shook his head. Does the Archbishop think that we have enough time and manpower to give the medicine to all the infected people in Beijiang? Especially under the pressure of the allied forces of the remnants. Archbishop Arlo was speechless. He could only watch as the soldiers of the Whitestone army hurriedly poured the ultimate plague nemesis, which was actually the solution of the zombie virus, onto the army of the undead. The front line began to push back. Although the plague undead army had the advantage in numbers, the zombies could continuously convert their enemies into their own kind. Moreover, for monsters like zombies, unless they were attacked in the head, even if their HP was emptied, it would stop at one point and temporarily lose the ability to move. After a few minutes, their HP would automatically recover and they would be able to move again. The large barrels of liquid shot out from the catapults blossomed in the rear of the plague undead army, and the zombie virus quickly spread. In any case, the pressure on the city walls had lessened significantly. Bai Xiaowen walked down the city wall. Wherever he went, people would make way for him and look at him strangely. At the same time, Bai Xiaowen received a notification that his reputation in the human camp had dropped. It had not yet fallen below the reverence level, But with the progress of the umbrella plan, his reputation was constantly falling. It would not be long before it fell below the reverence level. This was under the condition that the prince was the scapegoat. If Bai Xiaowen acted rashly, his reputation would definitely collapse. In the end, he might not even get any credit at all. Li Shi also received the notification that his reputation had dropped. He said worriedly, "What should we do now? Let's go buy the return item now. If it falls below the reverence level, we can't buy it anymore." The return scroll from the quartermaster of the Black Rock Fortress required the reverence level of reputation to purchase. Don't worry. These temporary losses of reputation are just fleeting clouds, Bai Xiaowen said calmly. I've prepared for so long and spent so much effort to promote the umbrella plan. I'm not satisfied with just completing an S-rank main storyline mission. Back at his residence, Bai Xiaowen took out the other communication rune that he had specifically asked Prince Nicholas for. The communication rune that Prince Nicholas had given him was placed in the Red Leaf Fortress. These two runes were used to communicate with the magic network of the Cane Plane. As for the distance of the communication, it was related to the grade of the communication rune. These two runes could support communication from Black Rock City to Red Leaf City. They were considered to be of a higher grade. It was a pity that the communication rune could not be brought out of the Cane Plane. Even if it was brought out, without the support of the magic network of the Cane Plane, it would not work. After injecting his mental strength, the communication rune shone brightly. Not long after, a figure appeared in the illusory light. He had a big head, a small body, and goldfish eyes. It was Dr. Zombie. "Hi, boss. Let me guess what you're looking for me for." A paid vacation. "After finishing this job, I'll give you a very long vacation," Bai Xiaowen said calmly. "Now, cheer up. How are the preparations on your side?" "Under my diligent supervision, the production of the factory is going very smoothly. Moreover, according to boss's arrangements, the 21 territories in the northern border have been properly arranged. With one order from you, the entire northern border will boom within 48 hours. You know what I mean, boss." "Ha ha ha. Is Cecilia here?" Bai Xiaowen asked. Cecilia's figure appeared beside Dr. Zombie. "Dior, the mildly infected people in my territory have all been gathered in Red Leaf City. After taking the plague nemesis drug that you developed, the symptoms of the necromancy plague have been significantly alleviated," Cecilia said with a tired expression. "It's estimated that they'll all recover in another 5 or 6 days. How's the situation on your side?" Dr. Zombie was a little unhappy. "Hey, madam, the plague nemesis is my patented invention." "Very good, you don't have to worry." Bai Xiaowen ignored Dr. Zombie's protest and nodded to Cecilia. "Cecilia, after some time, all the humans in the northern border, except for Black Rock City and Red Leaf City, will turn into brainless zombies. It's quite dangerous. However, Red Leaf City has very high walls, so don't worry too much. You have to maintain the stability of Red Leaf City. Once you discover that someone has turned into a zombie, isolate and eliminate them immediately." Although Bai Xiaowen had already cleaned up Red Leaf City before he left, and all the people that Cecilia had brought over had also taken the cure, there was still the possibility that some infected people would slip through the net. The characteristic of the ultimate plague nemesis, the zombie virus, was that it wouldn't affect healthy people. It would only forcibly transform the necromancy plague in the plague infected. Back then, Dr. Zombie had accidentally created the WD-01 substance through his zombie body, causing a group of plague-infected people to turn into zombies. After that, Bai Xiaowen realized that this might be a shortcut to completing the S-rank hero mission, Fight the Plague. After developing the antidote, Bai Xiaowen gave Dr. Zombie an advance order for the next month to continue his research based on the zombified substance. This mad scientist indeed had an extraordinary talent in the field of research that could destroy humans. He quickly upgraded his technology and obtained new results. In the first upgrade, he obtained the WD-02 substance, which could be used to transform the necromancy plague and its infected people into zombies through diet and injection. However, Bai Xiaowen wasn't satisfied with this. After that, he obtained the WD-03 substance, which was the ultimate plague nemesis. It could be transmitted through the air. At this point, the umbrella plan had the technological foundation to realize. Don't worry, I'll recruit people and train them to shoot arrows. I'll turn Maple City into a strong city and an important stronghold for the humans of the northern borderline, Cecilia said. Bai Xiaowen grunted in acknowledgement. Job, Ferdinand, those Ebony Knights, are they cooperating? Bai Xiaowen asked. At the mention of this, Dr. Zombie said with a bitter expression, "Boss, those 5 Ebony Knights were very fierce. They wanted to kill me as soon as they saw me. After hearing your request, they almost killed me. Luckily, they had the prince's warrant that Keats brought, so they reluctantly agreed to cooperate." Of the 7 Ebony Knights that had been scattered to the northern borderline, Ian and Jarek had been killed by Bai Xiaowen. Only 5 remained. Of these 5, apart from Job and Ferdinand who might be a little better, the other 3 who hadn't met Bai Xiaowen probably didn't have a good impression of Bai Xiaowen. Not to mention, Dr. Zombie was an undead creature. Moreover, Bai Xiaowen's request that Dr. Zombie brought was for these Ebony Knights to cooperate fully with the Umbrella Plan and turn all the plague infected in the northern borderline into zombies. The fact that these knights didn't kill Dr. Zombie on the spot was definitely due to the prince's warrant. Bai Xiaowen wasn't worried about the knights' obedience. They weren't naive little girls like Bonita who hadn't seen much of the world and understood that where the light shone, the shadow would follow. If they didn't turn the plague infected into zombies, they would turn into plague undead after a while. Under the command of the Plague Lord, they would join the plague army besieging Black Rock City. Since that was the case, it was better to turn them into zombies in advance. Zombies acted on instinct and wouldn't be controlled by the Plague Lord. As for saving them, they couldn't be saved. With the production of the common plague nemesis that Maple City had recently collected, it could only cure a portion of the mildly infected in Cecilia's territory. Dr. Zombie, other than supervising the production, did you have any other research results during this time? Bai Xiaowen asked. Is the possibility of controlling zombies possible? Dr. Zombie shrunk his neck. Boss, please allow me to remind you that the number of orders you've given me this month has seriously exceeded the limit, so there's none? Bai Xiaowen stroked his chin. Your paid leave. I'll have to reconsider. Boss. You're violating the labor law. Dr. Zombie said sternly. Is there a labor law that stipulates that I can only do 3 things in a month? Bai Xiaowen choked on Dr. Zombie's words and said with a cold expression, that's it. Next month's leave is cancelled. Stop, wait a minute. Dr. Zombie hurriedly waved his hands. Although I can't control zombies, I did have some new ideas during this period of supervising the production. I've made something new. Boss, you might like it. I've already given it to Keats and asked him to bring it with him on his return trip. I've also given him a manual. Not bad. Not bad. Bai Xiaowen didn't expect Dr. Zombie to be so tactful. However, it's a rushed product after all. There might be some minor flaws. Please don't mind, boss. I don't mind. If there's a problem, you can go to the Delafa and get a whip yourself. Ignoring Dr. Zombie's sour expression, Bai Xiaowen finally said, the Umbrella Plan is now officially activated. Within 48 hours, the ultimate plague nemesis will cover the entire northern borderline. Considering the ultimate plague nemesis's strong infectivity through the air, as long as they set up infection sources in the main villages and towns in the territories of northern borderline, they would be able to cover the entire northern borderline in no time, as Bai Xiaowen said. Back on the city walls, the situation on the battlefield outside had gradually turned around. At the very least, there were no more plague undead below the city walls. Batches of plague undead rushed over, and the zombies met them head-on. On the front line, the plague undead were all turned into new zombies, which then turned around and attacked other plague undead. Moreover, when the zombies' HP was emptied, as long as their heads were still intact, they wouldn't truly die. They would only fall to the ground and wait for their HP to recover to full before regaining their mobility. The zombies' weakness was their heads. The controller of the plague undead would definitely be able to discover it. However, the controller couldn't control the plague undead to concentrate their attacks on the zombies' heads. This kind of long-distance, precise command was beyond the scope of their abilities. Therefore, although the number of zombies seemed small, the front line was slowly moving towards the other side. Moreover, the trebuchets on the city walls were constantly throwing large wooden barrels filled with the ultimate plague nemesis. These cannonballs were much more effective than stone bullets. Wherever they landed, a batch of plague undead would be turned into zombies. Among the remnant tribes, a portion of them, like Kairhan, had been transformed into undead and had the plague undead virus in their bodies. These remnant people who had been transformed into undead would also turn into zombies after coming into contact with the ultimate plague nemesis. Among them, the elite individuals were much stronger than normal humans after being zombified. They could be seen as the embryonic form of Cain's lickers or tyrants. Flap flap flap. In the midst of the chaos, a group of bats swept past the zombie crowd and landed in human form. It was Kitz. His movements attracted the attention of a few zombies, but before they could turn around and pounce, Kitz transformed into a bat again and flew up the city walls. Dark creatures? Archbishop Arlo's eyes widened. Chapter 296. Kitz glanced at Archbishop Arlo with lingering fear, then shrunk his neck and obediently returned to Bai Xiaowen's side. Archbishop Arlo didn't say much. Although he didn't agree with Bai Xiaowen, they were still on the same side. "Boss, the doctor asked me to give this to you." Kitz handed Bai Xiaowen a small wooden box. Bai Xiaowen took it and opened it. There were 2 rows of small bottles inside, each containing a different colored liquid. WD-03 inducing liquid, attract the attention of all WD-03 virus-infected zombies, within a 500-meter radius. They can't wait to give you a passionate hug and kiss. Lasts for 30 minutes. WD-03 disguising liquid, disguise yourself as a WD-03 virus infected, causing all nearby infected to treat you as one of their kind and not attack you. Friendly reminder, remember, this thing can only last for 10 minutes. The above 2 improper instructions naturally came from the zombie doctor's manual. Bai Xiaowen narrowed his eyes and thought for a while. "How is it? Can this be used?" Li Shi asked in a low voice. "If the manual is correct, then it should be very useful. However, I still have to give it a try in advance, in case I get tricked by the zombie doctor." Bai Xiaowen answered. The manual given by the zombie doctor wasn't as reliable as the item instructions given by the spirit world. Putting away the small wooden box, Bai Xiaowen looked at Kitz. "Your ability to turn into a swarm of bats doesn't need to wait for a while, and can be used again immediately?" "Yes." Kitz nodded. "Then isn't that invincible?" Li Shi said in a daze. "Physical attackers will have a headache when faced with this ability." No, miss, you misunderstand. There's a price to pay for using this ability." Kitz tilted his head and thought for a while before giving an example. "It's like being ked by a woman several times." Before he could finish his words, Li Shi glared at him. Bai Xiaowen nodded. "It should consume mental energy, and possibly stamina as well." He checked Kit's status and could see that his mental energy was almost depleted. It seemed that it was not easy for him to cross the chaotic battlefield and return here. Actually, Bai Xiaowen could have done what he had done before, first recalling Kitz and then summoning him again. That way, Kitz wouldn't have to go through this dangerous region of the battlefield. There were 2 limitations to doing this. First, the straight-line distance between Kitz and Bai Xiaowen couldn't exceed the range of Bai Xiaowen's psychic connection. Secondly, Kitz had to be in a non-combat state. Another important reason was that Kitz didn't have a storage space. The instant he was summoned back to the Black Soul Stone, the small wooden box of Dr. Zombie would be left behind. At this time, the coalition forces of the remnants had become chaotic under the attack of the ultimate plague nemesis. Although the remnant clans that hadn't been transformed into undead wouldn't be affected by the ultimate bane of the plague, the number of clans that had been transformed into undead like the Bloodspear clan was even greater. At present, the number of soldiers who were forcibly turned into zombies was still a small number. However, the companions who had been fighting side by side a moment ago had become zombies who had lost their minds the next moment, attacking and biting them madly. This terrible change was obviously a great blow to the morale of the remnants. On the city wall, there were gradually cheering sounds from the crowd. Although Bai Xiaowen's umbrella plan was somewhat unacceptable to ordinary people, it was a fact that there was a glimmer of hope in the originally hopeless situation of the battle. Perhaps these people would return to condemning Bai Xiaowen after seeing the scene of zombies everywhere in Beijian. Count Denton, whose armor was stained with blood, walked to Bai Xiaowen's side and asked softly, "Those beasts have changed their formation. The enemy's commander has also come out. Are they still going to charge?" Bai Xiaowen looked over and saw the commander of the coalition forces of the remnants, Absalom Herzlit, who was riding a tall giant wolf, holding a giant axe and shouting orders to maintain order. "No, they are going to retreat," Bai Xiaowen said. Under the command of Absalom, the remnants of the army tore animal skins, linen and other things to cover their mouths and noses. Then they waved their butcher's knives and quickly and efficiently killed their infected and forcibly turned zombie comrades. Finally, they began to retreat in an orderly manner. During the process, Absalom had been supervising the battle with a giant axe in his hand. His appearance was like a stabilizing needle, restoring order to the chaotic remnants of the army. They really retreated. Unfortunately, this is a good opportunity to pursue the enemy and expand the results of the battle, if there are no zombies blocking the way, Count Denton said. Bai Xiaowen shook his head gently but said nothing. In fact, with Absalom personally bringing up the rear, the remnants of the remnants were defeated but not in disorder. Even if there were no zombies blocking the way, there was no chance. Count Denton patted Bai Xiaowen on the shoulder and said, "Baron Dior, you saved everyone. In the eyes of many people, not only did I not contribute, but I may also be a sinner," Bai Xiaowen said. "Eagles don't need to care about pigeons." Count Denton personally went out of the city to fight. Facing the endless sea of undead, he felt deeply desperate. Bai Xiaowen's umbrella plan succeeded in turning the situation around. In Count Denton's view, it was naturally a miraculous achievement. "Let's not talk about this. I'm going to see His Highness," Bai Xiaowen said. Prince Nicholas had left the city wall at some point and did not join the cheering crowd. Count Denton said, "His Highness doesn't seem to be in a good mood." After seeing the remnants of the remnants in chaos, he left. "You can go to the Lord's mansion to find him." Bai Xiaowen walked down the city wall and entered the Lord's mansion of Black Rock City. After asking the servants, they finally found Nicholas in a tall watchtower in the north of the Lord's mansion. "You're here." Nicholas, who was looking into the distance, glanced back. "Your Highness, the enemy is retreating, but you don't seem to be in a good mood," Bai Xiaowen said. Nicholas showed a complicated smile. "Although the enemy is gone, the humans in the northern borderline are also finished. The remnants of the remnants have retreated in an orderly manner. I'm afraid this result is not a victory. When I return to the capital, I will be greatly criticized. Tell me, how can I be happy?" "I can understand that His Highness will be under a lot of pressure like me," Bai Xiaowen said, "but we still have a way to remedy it." "What way?" Nicholas asked. "Chase the enemy and kill the commander of the Allied forces, Great Chief Absalom Herzlit." At night, the starry sky in the northern borderline was clear. In the biting cold wind, the muffled roars of zombies could be heard occasionally. After all, zombies moved slowly and only acted on instinct. It was unrealistic to expect them to actively pursue the retreating Allied forces. After the Allied forces paid a certain price and withdrew from the battlefield, these zombies wandered outside Black Rock City in groups. It was hard to tell how the people in the city felt about these zombies. They protected Black Rock City, but they also troubled the humans in Black Rock City. Any human who wanted to go out of Black Rock City would be attacked indiscriminately by nearby zombies. In the quiet night, two black figures on horseback appeared from the side gate of Black Rock City and sneaked outside the city. The nearby zombies noticed them, but they did not move at all. The WD-03 camouflage liquid made by Dr. Zombie is quite useful, Li Shi commented. Bai Xiaowen nodded. The experiment is successful. Let's go quickly and leave here while the camouflage liquid lasts. There were tens of thousands of zombies, but they were mainly wandering around Black Rock City. As long as they left the vicinity of Black Rock City within 10 minutes of the camouflage liquid's effect, they would be safe. Bai Xiaowen opened the mission panel and shared the newly unearthed branch mission with Li Shi. Hero Side Mission, Kill the Enemy Chief, Mission Difficulty, I. Mission Objective, Kill the Commander of the Allied Forces, Great Chief Absalom Herzlit. Mission Time Limit, 24 hours, Mission Reward, Unknown. Li Shi accepted the shared mission without hesitation. After reading the mission content, he said in surprise, Kill the Enemy Chief? This mission is so difficult. It's actually an A-level hero mission. The reward must be very good. Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, Normally, Absalom's strength is higher than Nicholas. He should be at the Lord level. If we can kill him with our own strength, the final reward will be very good. But we don't have such strength, especially when the Wrath Claw is dead and can't be summoned. The two talked in a low voice while galloping north. The Allied forces of the Allied forces were only temporarily retreating. They were not willing to end the war with a strong start but a weak finish. After crossing the Black Iron Gorge, the zombies had been left behind and could not be seen. The Allied forces of the Allied forces set up camp to rest and reorganize. An orc came to the chief's animal skin tent and heard the painful wailing of a human woman, which made his expression change. However, the orc ignored it and said directly, Great Chief, the other leaders are waiting for you. The painful wailing in the tent stopped abruptly. The tent flap was lifted, and Absalom walked out, revealing his muscular chest and lush chest hair. There was a trace of hostility on his face, which made the orc who came to report tremble. The slave girl in my tent is already dead. Hand her over to the logistics team, and kill all the human prisoners and make them into jerky. We are now in urgent need of food. Yes, Great Chief. After Bai Xiaowen completed the surprise attack mission, the Allied forces of the Allied forces failed to capture the Blackrock fortress. The consequences of the food shortage finally appeared. However, the survivors had their own ways to solve the food problem. Absalom strode to the big bonfire in the center of the camp, where a group of clan leaders was waiting for him. In addition to these clan leaders, there were also a few mysterious figures in black robes. Absalom glanced at the black-robed men and showed a disgusted look. Absalom, we have to discuss the follow-up action. Should we attack or retreat? One of the troll tribe leaders asked. Attack, of course. Absalom snorted angrily. Retreat? Where should we retreat to? We have used up all the food reserves for this war. If we retreat, how can we survive this damn winter without food? But if we attack, we have to face those damn monsters. As long as our soldiers are bitten or scratched by those monsters, they will be transformed into the same monsters. Absalom sneered. You are wrong. My great axe tribe took on the task of bringing up the rear and fighting against those damn monsters. A dozen people were scratched, but no one was transformed. Really? The other leaders asked in surprise. How did your great axe tribe do it? You have to ask them about this. Absalom pointed at the black-robed men and said, Haven't you noticed? My tribe did not accept the so-called gift of the ruler. Our great axe tribe did not betray the glory of the beast god. And you, people who are willing to accept the gift, think that you have obtained great power, but in fact, you have been contaminated. A black-robed man lifted his hood, revealing an ugly face that was covered in wrinkles and resembled a skeleton. He said in a hoarse voice, Other than the human infected, the Overlord has never controlled any of the tribal warriors of the remnant tribes. While being given power, the self-consciousness of the tribal warriors was not affected at all. I believe that everyone here is very clear about this. We have signed a contract and can trust each other. Then how do you explain the plague undead turning into those monsters? We are not clear about this, but the ruler must know what to do. We will return to the Sin domain soon and ask for the ruler's instructions. Absalom laughed loudly. Great, when you return, my people will have starved to death. The black-robed man remained calm. Your Excellency, why don't you consider letting the Great Axe tribe also accept the ruler's gift? Once they are completely transformed into undead, they will no longer need to eat. Nonsense. Absalom raised his axe and was about to chop down, but the other leaders quickly stopped him. Suddenly, there was a beast-like roar coming from all sides of the camp. The faces of the dozen or so clan leaders all changed. They were very familiar with this roar. It was clearly the unconscious roar of the abominable monsters during the day. Didn't you guarantee that humans could not control those monsters? How could those monsters chase us here? Absalom said angrily. The black-robed men also panicked. No, this doesn't sound like the sound of a human turning into a monster, it sounds like our clansmen. One of the giant demons said. Tung, tung, tung. The beast man who went to report to Absalom hurried over and said in a panic, Great chieftain, this is bad. All the soldiers outside the camp have turned into those terrifying monsters that have lost their minds. The black-robed man suddenly realized. That's right, the enemy must have sneaked in. They must have spread the drug that can forcefully transform the plague undead in the camp. Roar! Chapter 297. Absoran waved his giant axe, and strong wind pressure surged, slowing down the movements of the zombies. Then, Absoran's giant axe fell, and several elite zombies were directly beheaded. However, the orc who was pushed down was already dead. His body was dripping with blood, and it was a tragic sight. He did not have the plague of the dead in his body, so he would not be turned into a zombie. But because of this, he could not escape the severe pain of being gnawed. During the day, I noticed that the weakness of these monsters is their heads. As long as their heads are cut off, they will die immediately. Absoran said. Prepare for battle. No, we must retreat immediately. The troll leader said in a panic. Since the enemy has brought the drug that can forcibly transform the plague of the undead, then we definitely have no chance of winning. Now in the entire camp, only the giant axe tribe has not received the sovereign's gift. In other words, all the warriors of the other tribes would be infected and turned into zombies. Although the giant axe tribe was the most powerful tribe among the survivors, it was impossible for them to withstand the zombie tide of so many small and medium-sized tribes. Messy footsteps sounded. The transformed zombies on the periphery of the camp began to spontaneously advance into the camp. Panic spread, and groups of soldiers who had been transformed into the undead were forced to move closer to the leaders in the center of the camp. During this process, some people constantly repeated the process of trembling, throwing away their weapons, salivating, and zombifying. They hugged their former comrades and began to gnaw on them. After being gnawed, it did not take long for their comrades to stand up again and join the ranks of the zombie army. The ultimate plague of the dead could be transmitted through the air, or through the bites and scratches of zombies. As long as there was an individual with the plague of the dead in their body, they would be transformed. Bai Xiaowen and Li Shui, who were hiding among the zombies, took out large wooden barrels from the storage space and constantly threw them into the depths of the camp. The barrels fell, and the medicinal liquid mixed with the ultimate plague of the dead flowed out, accelerating the zombification of the survivors' army. Finally, a few zombies rushed to the center of the camp. The leaders were forced to fight. Of course, they were much stronger than the zombies, but there was one crucial point. Except for Absalom, the others could not be hurt, whether by scratches or bites. If they were injured, the leader would also turn into a zombie and become a zombie boss. Absoran roared and summoned his giant wolf. He swung his giant axe and killed the zombies one by one. He blew a shrill bone whistle in an attempt to gather his clansmen. At this point, only his giant axe tribe hadn't been transformed into undead, so there was still hope for them to be saved. However, the giant axe tribe was stationed in the inner circle of the camp. As the chieftain, Absalom naturally had his own selfish motives. He arranged for his people to stay in the relatively safe inner circle. However, after the camp was surrounded by 3 layers of zombies, the giant axe tribe in the inner circle had a hard time escaping. Bai Xiaowen used insight and deducted 100 mana points when he saw Absoran from afar. Absalom Herzlit, Lord level 7, race, humanoid/orc, profession, war overlord attributes, 100 STR, 42 DEX, 61 CON, 30 WIL Lord skill, Warlord's Heart, increases Absalom's HP by an additional 700 points, reduces magic damage taken by 30%, and reduces the duration of all control effects by 50%. Special skill, Giant Wolf Contract. All damage taken by Absalom will be transferred to his giant wolf mount until the wolf's HP is reduced to 20%. The giant wolf has 500 HP, combat skill, armor break cleave? That's amazing. Li Shi was shocked and whispered. A level 7 lord with 100 strength. The power of this beastman chieftain was even greater than that of Guan Yu of the 3 kingdoms. Of course, Guan Yu was only a level 5 lord. He was 2 levels lower than Absalom Absoran, and there was a crucial upgrade from level 6 to level 7. What was more shameless was that Absalom's HP was so high that it made one's hair stand on end. First of all, the Lord's skill, Warlord's Heart, increased his HP by an additional 700 points. Then, his giant wolf mount would absorb 400 points of damage for him, 500 by 80%. On top of that, his 61 con gave him a total of 610 HP, a whopping 1,710 HP. It was even more terrifying than a level 7 orc chieftain. This is the difficulty of an A-rank hero quest, Bai Xiaowen whispered. If Absalom was in his best condition, we would never be able to defeat him. Alright, now that the zombie horde has formed, let's retreat while the camouflage potion on us still has some time left. We'll wait and see what happens. The 2 sneaked out of the chaotic camp and found a higher vantage point to observe the battle from above. What worried Bai Xiaowen the most was Absoran's skills. Due to the huge difference in strength, Bai Xiaowen could only see Absoran's Lord tier skills and unique skills. As for his battle skill, Bai Xiaowen only saw Absoran's armor break. Fortunately, there was an endless stream of zombies surrounding Absalom, forcing him to constantly use his skills. Bai Xiaowen would receive a notification from the spirit realm every once in a while. He had also memorized the rest of Absalom's skills. He sighed inwardly. A level 7 lord was indeed powerful. Raging Charge. Petrifying Roar. Armor Break Cleave. Absalom's skills were either crowd control, super displacement, or group damage and armor break. He charged left and right in the middle of the zombie horde like a tank. Wherever he went, zombies were sent flying. If it weren't for the 2 zombified clan leaders holding Absalom back, he would have broken through the encirclement, Li Shi whispered. Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, the 2 clan leaders can't hold Absalom back. He hasn't left yet because he wants to gather his tribesmen and leave together. A group of beastmen from the giant axe tribe had already gathered around Absalom. However, although Absalom was brave and invincible, he only had a pair of hands. He couldn't protect his tribesmen. Under the onslaught of the zombies, the beastmen of the giant axe tribe were rapidly losing members. Absoran was also injured. Although the attack power of the remnant zombies wasn't strong, they were still able to inflict damage to him. Absoran's defense wasn't strong enough to ignore the attacks of the remnant zombies. Chapter 298. Giant War Overlord Absoran's unique skill, Giant Wolf Contract, has lost its effect. The first stage of riding has ended. Absoran has lost his Raging Charge skill. Giant War Overlord Absoran's second stage, Foot Battle Mode, has begun. Absoran has acquired the skill, Earthquake. Absoran roared in the language of the survivors, and his giant axe slammed into the ground. With him as the center, the ground within a radius of tens of meters cracked open, and the zombies around him fell into a state of unconsciousness. Their bodies were infused with tyrannical force, and they were stiff and unable to move. However, the people of the giant axe tribe behind Absoran were not affected. Under Absoran's command, they quickly formed an arrow formation, and with Absoran as the leader, they launched an assault to the north of the camp. Is he going to break out of the encirclement? Li Shi asked. That's right. Absoran is not a fool. He has realized that he can't save more people if he continues to delay, and the zombies in the camp will only increase. It's the wisest choice to break out of the encirclement while he still has the strength, Bai Xiaowen said. Li Shi wanted to say something, but when he saw Bai Xiaowen's leisurely look, he held back. Bai Xiaowen was a little surprised, and said with a smile, I thought you were going to ask what we should do next. Since you are already prepared, wouldn't it make me look stupid if I asked again? Li Shi looked as if she had seen through all of them. Bai Xiaowen shook his head and laughed, Don't worry, Absoran won't be able to get away so easily. Absoran took advantage of the chaotic situation before all the soldiers in the camp turned into zombies. He took the lead and killed his way through the camp with his super strength. Countless heads rolled under his giant axe. Among these heads, there were zombie heads, and also the heads of the soldiers who had not yet turned into zombies. The latter was blocking Absoran's way. In Absoran's eyes, except for his giant axe tribe, the people of the other tribes had already been transformed into zombies, and sooner or later, they would turn into zombies. It made no difference whether he killed them earlier or later. Those who were not his people could be killed. After killing his way through the encirclement, Absoran looked back and saw only a few hundred people rushing out. Chief! My son is still in the camp. My two brothers haven't rushed out yet. Great Chief! Let's go back and gather the other clansmen to save them. When the giant axe tribe was strong and prosperous, they claimed to have 3,000 elite warriors. Including the old and the weak, their population exceeded 10,000. In the process of Bai Xiaowen's surprise attack on the enemy's rear, the other tribes had suffered some losses, but only the giant axe tribe had followed the central army and had not suffered any losses. However, this sudden wave of zombies had caused most of the giant axe tribe's clansmen to be lost in the depths of the camp. Less than 10% of the total population had escaped, and most of them were male orc warriors. Absoran's face darkened. No! With every passing minute, the number of undying monsters was increasing, and the difficulty of bringing people out was getting higher and higher. When the camp is filled with those undead monsters, even I will die in there. But we are the only men left in the giant axe tribe. Without women to give birth to children, we will perish sooner or later. Bullshit! As long as I'm here, the giant axe tribe won't perish. No women, no food, we can take them all, but we can't lose any more elite warriors. This is the vitality of the tribe's rebirth. Absoran's giant axe slammed down heavily. No one is allowed to turn back. Everyone, head north. Suddenly, a series of messy footsteps sounded from the north, and Absoran's voice came to an abrupt halt. Roar, 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 a sea of zombies rushed over from the north, bringing with them large clouds of smoke and dust. These zombies were smaller than the zombies that the survivors had turned into. Absoran quickly recognized them. They were the human zombies that had been transformed from the plague's undead at the foot of Black Rock City. At the front of the sea of zombies, a barefoot man wearing a tattered double-breasted suit ran for his life amidst a series of strange howls. Vampire Kits. At night, Vampire Kits, Nightwalker, passive skill increased all his attributes by 20%. In addition, he could transform into a bat and fly short distances. This allowed him to easily attract the dense sea of zombies without worrying about being killed. Kits looked panicked, but he was actually as calm as an old dog. He even had the leisure to wave at Absoran and the others across from him. Hey! Friends over there, how are you doing? This damned livestock, do you want to die together with us? Absoran was enraged. He raised his giant axe, took a step forward, and swung it down at Kits. Kits quickly took out a bottle of medicine and poured it on himself. He activated his bat transformation skill and flew away. Kits had attracted so many zombies previously because of the zombie doctor's WD-03 inducing fluid. Now that he had achieved his goal, he quickly used the WD-03 camouflage fluid to disguise his aura as that of a zombie and fled far away. Absoran's axe missed. In the next second, the few hundred survivors of the giant axe tribe faced the sea of zombies head-on. Zombies only relied on their instincts to move. Once they lost their target, Kits, they naturally shifted their target to Absoran and the others. Roars rang out everywhere. Human zombies and survivors joined forces and surrounded Absoran and the others. Broken limbs were thrown everywhere, and black blood splattered everywhere. However, Absoran and the other survivors also had more wounds on their bodies. Back to back, form a circle. Shrink the formation. Absoran roared. This way, they could leave their backs to their companions and reduce the chances of getting injured. Absoran didn't know how many times he swung his axe, killing group after group of zombies. However, there was always an endless stream of zombies filling the gap, surrounding him and his people. The human zombie civilians were weak, but the survivors' zombies were quite strong. What was more serious was that as time passed, more and more survivors in the camp completed their zombification. The speed at which Absoran and the others killed the zombies couldn't compare to the transformation speed of the elite zombies in the survivors' camp. Bai Xiaowen had been hiding in a tree like a patient hunter, waiting for Absoran's strength to run out. 1 hour, 2 hours, until a hazy glimmer appeared in the east. Dawn had arrived. The tribal warriors around Absoran had all died in battle. Even Absoran himself had almost reached the point of exhaustion. It was worth mentioning that when Absoran's HP dropped below 600 points, he triggered the third stage, the bloodthirst form. He abandoned his axe and replaced it with 2 one-handed axes. Blood mist rose from his body, making him look like a demon from hell. Every time he killed a zombie, a trace of blood mist would be produced. Bai Xiaowen checked the prompt of the spiritual world. This blood mist was a unique skill of Absoran's bloodthirst form. Bathing in the blood mist, Absoran's attack speed would be greatly increased, and his attacks would have the lifesteal effect. The blood mist would constantly evaporate and dissipate, but it would be replenished by killing enemies. Absoran's HP was maintained at more than 400 points for a long time, which was why he could hold on until dawn under the siege of countless zombies. However, there was a limit to human strength. Even a high-ranking lord like Absoran would run out of stamina at some point. The speed at which he swung his axe became slower and slower, and the blood mist slowly dissipated. What followed was the rapid decline of his HP. It's about time. I'll go alone. You stay here. Bai Xiaowen straightened his body. Be careful. Li Shi was a close-range fighter. Even if Absoran was exhausted, it would still be dangerous for him to fight. Bai Xiaowen wanted to nip this danger in the bud. Bai Xiaowen had the bug-like skill, life-sharing, and could be used as a long-range attacker. He was perfect for this job. As for summoning creatures, Bai Xiaowen did not plan to use them. After all, there was not enough camouflage fluid to go around. The skeleton mage was the only long-range attacker, and its magic output was limited by Absoran's Heart of War skill. It was better not to bring it. After using WD-03 camouflage fluid, Bai Xiaowen walked into the crowd of zombies. When he was a few dozen meters away from Absoran, he took out the Desert Eagle and aimed at Absoran's head. Bang! This shot had a 100% chance of triggering a critical hit, and it would also trigger a 250% headshot damage bonus. If it hit a vital point and ignored defense, even a Lord-tier elite like Absoran would have a hard time. However, Absoran's beastly instinct saved his life. The moment the bullet left the chamber, he moved to the side. Soon after, a bloody hole appeared on Absalom's shoulder, dripping with blood. After deducting the damage reduction effect, the shot had dealt 77 points of physical damage. Absoran's hawk-like eyes stared at Zhang Heng. Found you, he shouted. Swoosh. 2 battle axes whistled through the air, accompanied by the sound of thunder. The zombies along the way, whether they were human or elite zombies, were all cut down like wheat. The flying axes were aimed at Bai Xiaowen. Giant warlord Absoran's combat skill, weapon throw, activated. Bai Xiaowen was shocked. This was a skill that he had not detected beforehand, and Absoran had never used before. Looking at the power of this skill, even if he used a fixed-point airdrop, he would not be able to block the flying axes. The zombies along the way all fell down like weeds, which was a clear proof. Fatty, I'm sorry. Bai Xiaowen raised his hand to summon a stitched monster, and at the same time, cut off life-sharing. Rip! With the sound of cloth being torn apart, Fatty's body was cut into 4 pieces. Filthy blood flowed everywhere. The flying axes with 100 points of strength only slowed down a little after killing Fatty, and then continued to fly towards Bai Xiaowen. However, Bai Xiaowen had used Fatty's sacrifice to buy him some time. He fell to the ground like a stick. In the split second that Fatty managed to buy, regardless of whether Bai Xiaowen ran left and right or dodged back and forth, he would definitely die. As for activating glide, it was also unwise, because after Absoran threw the 2 short axes, he had already raised his ferocious giant axe and was rushing towards Bai Xiaowen, stepping on the broken limbs of the zombies on the ground. If Bai Xiaowen was in the process of falling after glide, wouldn't he be the perfect target? The 2 flying axes whistled past Bai Xiaowen's face, almost brushing past his face. Bai Xiaowen knew that this was a moment of life and death. After lying down, he rolled 4 or 5 meters away like a lazy donkey. Clang! Absoran's giant axe chopped down, splitting the ground where Bai Xiaowen had been standing. There was another flash of light, and 4 skeletal shield-bearers appeared at the same time. They threw themselves at Absoran's legs without caring about anything else. Bai Xiaowen got up and half-knelt on the ground. He held his gun with both hands and activated rapid fire, aiming at Absoran's heart. However, after throwing, pouncing, and slashing, Absoran had exhausted the last of his strength. He did not move anymore. His burly body leaned on the giant axe, and his chest was bleeding from the bullets. His life points had dropped to 1/1710. It's you. You used a vile potion to turn my soldiers into mindless monsters. Absoran roared in frustration. An eye for an eye, Bai Xiaowen sighed and stood up when it was time for the cut scene. Despicable human, it's a disgrace to die in your hands, Absoran said. Great. It must be a great honor for you to die in the mouth of zombies, Bai Xiaowen said calmly. For cannibals like you, being eaten by zombies is the best way to die. Bai Xiaowen was glad that he did not choose the Bloodspear clan in the beginning. Otherwise, he would not be able to survive the ordeal of eating human flesh. Since their paths were different, Absoran did not want to talk to Bai Xiaowen anymore. He looked up at the sky and sighed. I heard it. The beast god's call. With a thud, Absoran's burly body fell to the ground. You have killed Absoran Herzlit, the commander-in-chief of the allied forces of the Remnant, the chief of the Great Axe tribe. Your reputation in the human allied forces has greatly increased. Your current reputation level is worship. Your reputation in the allied forces of the sinners has greatly decreased. Your current reputation level is hatred. A-level hero side mission, kill the enemy chief, has been completed. Please go to the Black Rock Fortress to find Prince Nicholas, submit the mission, and receive your reward. S-level main mission, Flames of War in the Black Rock Fortress, has been completed. Please go to the Black Rock Fortress to find Prince Nicholas or Archbishop Arlo, submit the mission, and receive your reward. In the next 6 days, 18 hours, 33 minutes, and 47 seconds, you and your team are free to explore and leave the Cane Bit Wall at any time. All the gains, including but not limited to psionic points, equipment, and items, will not disappear. After Absoran's death, a dark gold treasure chest appeared. At this time, the 4 skeletal swordsmen were surrounded by zombies. Although they were skeletons, the zombies did not let them go. Chapter 299. On the way back, Bai Xiaowen and Li Shi opened the dark gold treasure chest. Will it drop Lord Tier equipment? Li Shi asked excitedly. Lord Tier equipment was of dark gold quality, which was even better than gold tier equipment. A piece of best gold equipment could greatly increase an awakened strength. A piece of ultimate dark gold equipment could transform an awakened into a whole new person. Even an ordinary dark gold equipment was better than a premium gold tier equipment in terms of attribute points and skills. Bai Xiaowen answered as he chose to open the treasure chest, "There is a chance, but it's very small. Strictly speaking, the zombies were responsible for Absalon's death. My contribution is so small that it's almost negligible. The rules of the spirit realm will definitely reduce the value of the loot. To put it simply, this is a dark gold treasure chest." At this time, Bai Xiaowen also received a notification. The score for killing Absalon was only B, and there were 2 free draws. However, Bai Xiaowen also received 19,568 psionic points at the same time. If there were no zombies and the awakened relied on their own strength to kill Absalon, they would be rewarded with 70,000 psionic points. "That's the price of a Lord Tier equipment," Bai Xiaowen said. Fortunately, as the only awakened who participated in the attack, the rules of the spirit realm were not too harsh. I was allocated about 20% to 30% of the psionic points. Li Shi was a little unconvinced. "Why? The zombies were also created by your summoned creatures. Can't mental labor be considered a contribution?" Bai Xiaowen laughed. "Forget it. It's useless to talk about this. The rules are the rules. Do you think that the rules of the spirit realm place more importance on fighting with real swords and spears? Does this indicate a tendency?" "Whose tendency?" Li Shi asked. "The tendency of the spiritual realm's rule maker." Bai Xiaowen raised his head and looked at the sky of the northern border. His gaze seemed to penetrate the layers of space. The spiritual realm's rule maker is probably a fighter. If he can fight, he won't talk nonsense. Then, Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, "That's a little off topic. Let's choose the cards. You and I each get one." Although Bai Xiaowen had already said that this was a counterfeit treasure chest, Li Shi was still excited. He chose one of the 20 high-end dark gold cards. Whoosh! The dark golden light receded, and a broken red stone fell into Bai Xiaowen's palm. "You have obtained a special item, Absalon's Blood Essence Stone, damaged." Bai Xiaowen checked the description of Absalon's Blood Essence Stone, broken. There was only a small line of text at the end. "This broken Blood Essence Stone contains a powerful consciousness. It looks like a very high-end item. I just don't know how to use it." We're a little ahead of ourselves again. Bai Xiaowen put away the Blood Essence Stone. He had to go back and check the information again. However, Bai Xiaowen had already browsed through most of the super gods database. With his reading ability and memory, there were not many secrets in the guild database that he did not know. Of course, Bai Xiaowen also had access to the guild's database. The information he read was within the scope of an A-class permanent member. Some information on high-level awakened ones, leaders, and rare items required a higher level of access. Bai Xiaowen then clicked on the second dark gold card. The dark golden light shone brightly, and it was unusually dazzling. No way. On the front of the card, there was a dark gold equipment icon. "You have obtained an equipment, War Overlord's Charge." Li Shi was stunned. Then, he suddenly grabbed Bai Xiaowen's sleeve. "Xiaowen, didn't you say that this is a water tank? It's a dark gold equipment, a Lord Tier dark gold equipment. A small probability event." Bai Xiaowen was also surprised. He quickly checked the equipment's attributes. War Overlord's Charge, binds after pickup, grade, Lord Tier, dark gold, equipment position, shoulder, equipment requirements, 40 strength, 30 physique, attributes, strength +7, physique +7, skills, charge, lock onto a target within 100 meters. After charging for a short period of time, charge at the target. Every enemy in the path will be sent flying, and they will suffer moderate impact damage. Each enemy hit will increase your strength by 20%, up to 100%. Lasts for 10 seconds. Cooldown time, 8 hours. Durability description: on the battlefield, only death awaits those who are targeted by the War Overlord. Bai Xiaowen sighed. A dark gold equipment. Li Shui sighed. Yes. Put it away. I don't want to disassemble it anyway. Bai Xiaowen sighed again. Was this dark gold equipment good? It was too good. The total attributes were increased by 14 points, and there was also the overbearing, charge skill. It was much better than the best gold equipment. However, 40 points of strength and 30 points of physique were like a natural barrier that blocked Bai Xiaowen's path. In fact, under normal circumstances, a level 7 overlord like Absalom would need a team of heroes with an average level of level 6 to challenge him. They would also need to create all kinds of favorable conditions to create a situation where they could solo Absalom. Although 40 points of strength was a harsh requirement, it was not an impossible goal for a level 6 warrior of the violent profession. If the requirements were met, a warrior of the heroic profession who could wear the shoulder guard could play the role of an assassin. They could charge through tens of thousands of troops and kill the enemy's leader in an instant with double the terrifying strength. This was the sign of a complete rebirth, which was also the sign of a top-tier dark gold equipment. Bai Xiaowen was too ahead of himself. As a level 4 overlord, he killed Absalom without the help of his teammates. As a result, he was in a predicament where he could not wear the loot and could only put it aside. More importantly, Bai Xiaowen's specialty was spirit. Even if he reached level 6 or level 7, his basic strength would not be enough. Xiaowen, don't be discouraged. This piece of equipment might be able to be traded, Li Shui said. Isn't this a pickup binding? Bai Xiaowen was unhappy. I heard from Dad that a pickup binding doesn't mean that it can't be traded, Li Shui said. It's just that the price of forcing a trade is very high. Normal gold equipment isn't worth it. This dark gold equipment is definitely worth it. There's such an item? It seems that when I go back, I'll have to ask Tai President for advice. Bai Xiaowen felt a little better. Chapter 300. At the end of the dark gold treasure chest, there was a guaranteed drop item, Absalom's severed head. This item was not included in the drop list. All in all, the profit from this counterfeit treasure chest had far exceeded Bai Xiaowen's expectations. Bai Xiaowen did not expect that he would be able to get a piece of dark gold equipment from such a small probability. One could imagine how much loot an Awaken could get if they killed Absalom on their own. After all, he was a High Lord. Although there was only one level difference between level 7 and level 6, the difference in strength was huge. After returning to Blackrock Fortress, Bai Xiaowen immediately found Nicholas and chose to submit the quest. You actually managed to kill him. Nicholas was shocked when he saw Absalom's severed head. He had fought Absalom head-on, so he knew how terrifying this Lord-class Awaken was. After being stunned for a while, Nicholas' expression changed from shock to joy. A-rank hero quest, kill the enemy chieftain has been submitted. Evaluation, pass. You have received 10,000 merit points from the Human Alliance Army. That was the only notification. There were no other rewards. Logically speaking, the reward for an A-rank hero quest should not be so low. Bai Xiaowen had previously completed the B-rank hero quest The Truth About the Plague. In addition to merit points, he had also received a special item called the Broken Oath. However, Bai Xiaowen knew better than anyone that he had killed Absoran through trickery. It was already good enough for him to get a passing rating for the quest. The final reward would definitely not be as good as completing the quest with real weapons. 10,000 merit points was not bad either. It was equivalent to a piece of half-gold equipment. After that, Nicholas lamented, I never thought that the war to protect the Black Rock Fortress would end in such a way. With this sigh, Bai Xiaowen received the second notification. S-Rank Main Quest, Flames of War in Blackrock Fortress has been submitted. Evaluation, good. You have received 1,500 merit points from the Human Alliance Army. You have received 3 broken oaths. Detected that you have 7 broken oaths. You have fulfilled the requirements for completing the side quest, Black Peak's Oath. Do you wish to submit? Submit. Bai Xiaowen suppressed the joy in his heart. He had finally obtained 7 broken oaths. He could form a permanent party item. You have lost 7 broken oaths. You have received 1 Black Peak's Oath. Bai Xiaowen looked at the description of the Black Peak's Oath. It was exactly the same as in the quest description, so there was no need to elaborate on it. As for the bonus effect after the party, it would be selected by the party leader. After obtaining this permanent party creation tool, Bai Xiaowen's heart completely settled down. This trip to the Cane Planar world, even if he only obtained this Oath of Black Peak, wasn't a wasted trip. The Black Peak's Oath was the awakened oaths of the awakened awakens was awakened oaths. Awakened members. After joining the party, there would be no effect if a member rose to level 7 or even higher. Dior, Job and Ferdinand reported to me that the undead plague infected people and the undead plague in all parts of the northern frontier have been forcibly transformed into zombies. This was also your plan, wasn't it? Nicholas said, you once promised me that you would eliminate all the undead creatures transformed by the undead plague in the northern frontier. Bai Xiaowen nodded. According to the literal meaning, all the undead plague in the northern frontier had now been transformed into zombies. This was another kind of elimination. Similarly, Bai Xiaowen had completed his task. Nicholas laughed bitterly. No wonder the umbrella plan was so well prepared. You had already hatched this crazy idea at that time. Bai Xiaowen nodded again. I really don't know how to describe my feelings now. Nicholas shook his head and laughed at himself. Perhaps in the eyes of a smart person like you, me and him are just pawns. Nicholas pointed to the table where Absalom Herzlit's hideous head could not rest in peace. I should be glad that you chose the human camp. Your Highness, I would like to correct one point, Bai Xiaowen said. I chose the human camp because I am a human, not an orc or a troll. Nicholas waved his hand. Forget it. There's no need to say so much. You killed the enemy commander. No one in the Human Alliance will doubt your loyalty. And now that I have this guy's head, I can finally report back to the Imperial capital. After a pause, Nicholas continued, your meritorious deed of eliminating the undead plague in the northern frontier should have been rewarded by the Imperial officials. However, the way you used it was undoubtedly unacceptable to the people. The officials also have to consider the feelings of the people. Therefore, in my own name, I will bestow you with a reward. Bai Xiaowen could understand what Nicholas meant. This could be seen as the punishment for completing the S-rank hero mission, Fight the Plague, by a shortcut. The official reward was definitely much better than the private reward. If Bai Xiaowen had killed all the undead plague and cured all the infected who had not mutated, he would have received the official reward. However, Bai Xiaowen had taken a shortcut and turned all the infected and the undead plague into zombies, cutting off their hope of being saved. Such actions were bound to be praised and criticized. Even if the imperial officials supported Bai Xiaowen's actions, they would not reward Bai Xiaowen. However, it was an S-rank hero mission after all. Even if the reward was reduced, it would not be too bad. Nicholas said, I'll give you 2 choices, the Spiritual Realms Rules Prompt Message, S-rank hero side mission, Fight the Plague has been submitted. Mission completion level, failed. Please choose your reward plan from the options below. Reward Plan A, White Stonehill Permanent Fief Order *1. White Stonehill Permanent Fief Order, White Stonehill will be your permanent fief. You can view and manage your territory at any time through the Hill main page, whether you are in the Cane Bit Wall or not. Reward Plan B, Merit Points *12,000. You can also choose 2 pieces of gold equipment from the quartermaster, Basil Heber, as your additional reward. Bai Xiaowen's slender eyebrows furrowed slightly. Of these 2 reward plans, Plan A was a little vague. What was a permanent fief? There was no information about this in Bai Xiaowen's memory. The description of the permanent fief order given by the spiritual realm's rules only said that one could view and manage the territory. It did not specify where the specific benefits would be. Plan B was the complete opposite. It directly gave the content of the benefits, and it was quite generous. 12,000 merit points were equivalent to 2 pieces of gold equipment. Not to mention the 2 additional pieces of gold equipment, which added up to 4 pieces of gold equipment. Moreover, these gold equipment were self-selected. One could choose according to the equipment slots that were empty. It would be an immediate supplement to the team's strength. However, since 2 options were given, it proved one thing. Plan A and Plan B should be close to equivalent. At least, Plan A's permanent fief order would not be much inferior to Plan B's 4 pieces of gold equipment. The attentive Bai Xiaowen also noticed that the permanent fief order was preceded by Whitestone Hill and not Whitestone Town. Despite the difference of one word, Whitestone Hill was a fief of the first generation from hundreds of years ago. It had not been reduced by successive inheritances. Its area was more than 10 times that of Whitestone Town. It even included the current Red Leaf Hill. I choose the first option, the permanent fief order of Whitestone Hill, said Bai Xiaowen. Nicholas nodded and said, after knowing your identity as a visitor from another Bitwall, my magic consultant and chief of staff opposed giving you this permanent fief. They advocated the second reward instead. But I think, the current northern frontier needs a human stronghold. An isolated Black Rock city alone is not enough. Although the attack of the remnant people this time has been declared defeated, the threat of the northern frontier still exists. Are you ready to leave, Your Highness? Asked Bai Xiaowen. That's right. I'm ready to lead the army to break through the zombie horde and return to the imperial capital, said Prince Nicholas. I hope to go with you. We're going to Red Leaf City, said Bai Xiaowen. Although Bai Xiaowen had the WD-03 camouflage liquid, he and Li Shi were not the only ones returning to Red Leaf City. The soldiers of the Whitestone Army under his command, as well as the knights that Cecilia had left for him to command, had to go back as well. With Nicholas' Imperial Army at the front, it would save a lot of energy to rush out with them. Of course, Bai Xiaowen would not let go of the opportunity to hitch a ride. Nicholas naturally had no objections to this. After going back to reorganize the troops, Li Shi said softly, I didn't expect to be able to complete an S-rank hero mission through trickery. I can't believe Nicholas is actually willing to admit to it. It probably has something to do with the mainstream concept of the Kane dimension, said Bai Xiaowen. After coming to the Kane dimension, I concluded that the mainstream concept here places a lot of importance on contracts. It's the predecessor of the spirit of contract that the West often refers to. No matter what the process is, as long as the result meets the requirements of the contract, it must be carried out. Li Shi thought for a while and nodded with a smile. It's a little similar to the Three Kingdoms dimension. It's all about trust. It's a little similar, but there's still a big difference, explained Bai Xiaowen. In the Three Kingdoms dimension, trust is about keeping a promise on a moral level. It's based on not going against one's moral conscience. On the other hand, the concept of contract in the Kane dimension is about keeping a promise on a legal level. It's based on not going against the law. However, when making a contract, you can play with words and exploit loopholes, just like modern business contracts. Li Shi nodded and said, when I first came in, I met the black-hearted butler, Job, who used a contract to seize the silver mining rights of Whitestone Town. It seems that the concept of trust in the Three Kingdoms dimension is better. Well, let's not talk about this for now. I've already obtained the item for permanent party building. Let's build the party now. Bai Xiaowen took out the ebony blade and chose to use it. You used a special item, ebony blade. After testing, the rarity of ebony blade is elite. You have created an elite team. The maximum number of people that the team can accommodate is 2, and their levels are not higher than 6. Please draw the bonus effect of the elite team. You can draw 3 times and finally choose 2 of the bonus effects. Bai Xiaowen sighed inwardly. The ebony blade that he had put together with so much effort and obtained 7 oaths of the shattered blade was only of the elite team grade. Thinking about it, how rare would the party building items of the hero team be? He would probably have to fight a lord, right? Bai Xiaowen chose to draw. Bonus effect A, tenacity, passive. Increases the health of all team members by an additional 30 points. Bonus effect B, brutality, passive. Increases the critical strike rate of all team members by an additional 5%. Bonus effect C, lure, active skill. Immediately lure a team member to your side within 100 meters. The cooldown time of this skill is 8 hours. All team members can use it and share the cooldown time. The so-called shared cooldown time meant that if one of them used the lure skill, the other team members would not be able to use the skill during the 8-hour cooldown time. The 3 bonus effects were not bad. However, the headache was that one of them had to be eliminated. Option A increases health. It's basically a must. Bai Xiaowen said. Option C can save your life when you're dealing with a dangerous boss. It's also a must. In this case, I can only give up on option B. It's a pity. The bonus critical strike rate of option B will be very helpful to your damage output. Li Shi's damage output now relied heavily on critical strikes in addition to attack speed. First of all, the +4 special effect of the fiendish fire jade pendant, Scorch, doubled the additional fire damage when it was a critical strike. In addition, after leveling up to level 4, the new passive skill of the profession, Mark of Thunder, required critical strikes to stack. The higher the critical strike rate, the faster the stack. Li Shi thought for a moment and suggested, Xiaowen, I think that among the 3 bonus effects, choosing one for survival is enough. My survivability is not bad now, and I have the protection of your summon creatures. Bai Xiaowen pondered for a moment. He chose the AC and AC options mainly for the safety of Li Shi's melee damage output. As for himself, with life sharing, 30 health points did not mean much. One must know that there were many pieces of equipment that increased constitution and health points, but very few pieces of equipment that increased critical strike rate. Moreover, the team had just been established and was only at level 1. The team could be leveled up in the future. After leveling up, the team's bonus effects would be improved. The additional critical strike rate of the brutality effect would be higher. The growth curve would be better than simply increasing health points. Then I'll choose BC and AC, option A is eliminated. Bai Xiaowen made his decision. After confirming, the spiritual realm precepts sent a notification. You have established an elite team. The confirmed bonus effects are brutality and lore. Chapter 301. Bai Xiaowen naturally gave the only invitation to Li Shi. The spiritual realm's rules prompted them again. Level 4 awakened, Storm Swordsman Li Shi, has joined your party. Your party has obtained 10 cubic meters of public storage space. The length, width, and height of the public storage space can be changed at will, but the volume will not change. Hint, the public storage space is bound to the party leader. The other party members must be within 5 meters of the party leader before they can use the public storage space. In permanent party mode, all equipment that you and your party members pick up and bind will be considered party-bound until the equipment is equipped. Bai Xiaowen smiled. I must like these 2 functions. The public storage space was 10 cubic meters, which was the same size as Bai Xiaowen's personal storage space. It could also be used by party members. Although there was a binding restriction of having to be within 5 meters of the party leader, it was still very good. The second rule was that picking up bound equipment would be considered as a party binding. This was to make it easier for Bai Xiaowen and Li Shi to exchange equipment. For example, if Bai Xiaowen picked up a piece of agility equipment on her own, Li Shi would not have been able to give it to her because he did not contribute to the kill. However, in permanent party mode, the equipment that Bai Xiaowen picked up would become party-bound and could be given to Li Shi. The same applied to the spirit equipment that Li Shi picked up. Currently, there were only 2 party slots. As the party leveled up in the future, the number of slots would definitely increase. When the time came, the party members would be able to exchange equipment and maximize the allocation of resources. Bai Xiaowen inquired, how can the party level be leveled up? This time, the spiritual realm's rules did not keep them in suspense. Probably because Bai Xiaowen had already established a party, they quickly gave a response. You will obtain more party building items. After using them, your party will gain experience points. After the experience points meet the requirements, you can level up. The higher the level and rarity of the party building items, the more experience points you will gain. Some special items can even upgrade your party to a heroic party. In addition, completing missions of elite difficulty and above will also provide the party with a certain amount of experience points. Bai Xiaowen continued to ask, what kind of strengthening buffs will the party receive after leveling up? The spiritual realm's rules seemed to have finished what they needed to say. They did not respond. They only said, please explore on your own. Bai Xiaowen shrugged. Tim, Mark, Phil, and the other knights went to reorganize the army with Keats. Bai Xiaowen and Li Shi went to the quartermaster, Basil Heber, intending to exchange all their accumulated merit points. The 2 of them had killed a large number of elite and even commander-class survivors and completed many difficult missions. They had accumulated a considerable amount of merit points. Bai Xiaowen had only spent a few hundred achievement points to exchange for some ale specialties that could restore one's physical strength. The rest of his achievement points had never been used. His and Li Shi's team achievement points were as high as 21,336 points. Exchange for a town portal scroll. Bai Xiaowen reached out to Basil Heber, who was in human vending machine mode, and clicked on the town portal scroll on the list. It was 5,000 merit points for one scroll. Bai Xiaowen did not even blink as he exchanged for it. 1 scroll, 2 scrolls, 3 scrolls, it was sold out. What a pity. There are only 3 town portal scrolls. Bai Xiaowen shook his head. This item was not bound to him, so it had a high trading value. When he returned to Earth, it would definitely be more valuable than a bound gold equipment. With 6,336 merit points left, Bai Xiaowen browsed through the list and exchanged for an S-grade mass teleportation scroll, spending 6,000 merit points. Fortunately, he already had worshipped reputation. Otherwise, he would not have been able to buy S-grade items and gold equipment. Bai Xiaowen did not intend to exchange for gold equipment. He had already seen that the gold equipment exchanged from the quartermaster was basically mediocre equipment with additional attributes. There were no top-grade gold equipment with additional skills. With the last few hundred merit points, Bai Xiaowen exchanged them all for Kane's specialty ale. Prince Nicholas left with his army, leaving Count Denton to guard Black Rock City. The lords of the various territories in the northern borderline, such as Julian and the others, had nowhere to go. There were only hordes of zombies in their territories, so there was no point in returning. The lords had all chosen to follow Nicholas to the imperial capital in order to be resettled by the imperial officials. Thus, there were only 2 human strongholds left in the northern borderline, Black Rock City and Whitestone City. That's right, Bai Xiaowen had already discussed with Cecilia to rename Maple City as Whitestone City, making it the capital of the new Whitestone region. Leaving Black Rock City was easier than Nicholas and the others had imagined. This was because Kits had already lured a large portion of the human zombies to the refugee camp north of the Black Iron Gorge. They had surrounded Absalon, so the zombie hordes outside the city were not as dense as yesterday. The formation of the Imperial Army was like a giant hammer. Wherever there were hordes of zombies, they would be smashed apart. Then, they moved all the way south, gradually moving further and further away. When they reached a fork in the road, Bai Xiaowen bid farewell to Prince Nicholas, Lord Julian, and the others. Nicholas' expression was still a little complicated, but he did not say anything in the end. He only nodded. His relationship with Bai Xiaowen had been stuck at the level of friends, unable to go any further. Even though Bai Xiaowen had made a great contribution in killing Absalon, it did not increase his favorability level. According to Bai Xiaowen's speculation, this should be one of the negative effects of his identity as an awakened being exposed by the natives. No matter how open-minded Nicholas was, he would still distance himself from Bai Xiaowen. After all, they were not from the same plane of existence. The favorability level of the other insiders and Bai Xiaowen did not increase at all. Some of them even decreased. This was a kind of evidence. Fortunately, Cecilia and Bai Xiaowen's favorability level had peaked a long time ago. Their favorability level had also been maintained at the level of being in love. This comforted Bai Xiaowen a little. Forget it. The favorability level of a bunch of men can be taken by whoever wants it. I only want the favorability level of the beautiful overlord. Bai Xiaowen led the army without any reluctance. They set off in the direction of the original Maple City, which was also the direction of New Baishur City. Along the way, Bai Xiaowen led the army to kill many zombies. What surprised him was that although these zombies did not drop treasure chests, they would still give him spiritual points. However, compared to monsters in the spiritual realm of the same level, the amount was slightly less. I think we found a gold mine. Bai Xiaowen muttered as he looked at the map of Beijiang. There's gold everywhere here. How much free exploration time do we have left? About 5 or 6 days, Li Shi said. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.